Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tempe City Council regular council meeting. Item number 1 is call to order. Council meetings can be watched in real time via Cox Cable Channel 11 and at tempe.gov/tempe11. Members of the public may also attend the meeting virtually through Microsoft Teams. If you have signed up to speak on items later on in the agenda, please know that as the presiding officer, I have the discretion to introduce items out of their regular order as listed on the agenda. I may change the order of items from time to time to accommodate scheduling, to allow us to address items with a large number of speaker cards, so those wishing to speak on those items don't have to wait until later in the meeting, or to otherwise expedite the business of the meeting. If you wish to speak on an agenda item and you haven't filled out a speaker card yet, please make sure to fill out and submit your completed card to the city clerk prior to the item coming forward for council discussion. I will call your name when it is your turn for public comment. I'd now like to invite everyone who's able and willing to stand to join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Tonight's agenda has a number of items that the City Council must consider in order to conduct city business. Guidelines for conduct at City Council meetings are on the table near the entrance for those in attendance at tonight's meeting. We will now play a video with the proper protocol for ensuring the appropriate conduct at City Council meetings.
The City of Tempe welcomes public comment at this time. Disruptive behavior will not be allowed. Continued disruptive behavior will lead to removal from the council chambers. We need to be able to hear everyone in the room. Behavior that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of any city council meeting is not helpful and is not permitted. This includes behavior both inside and outside of the council chambers. Should individuals inside the council chambers become disruptive so that city business is not able to be conducted, the mayor will first ask that the individuals allow city business to be completed. There will be time for public comment during the call to the audience portion of the meeting. If no cooperation, the mayor will issue a verbal warning and let them know that the continued disruptive behavior will lead to removal from the council chambers. If there is still no cooperation, the mayor will issue a second verbal warning and let them know that the continued disruptive behavior will lead to removal from the council chambers. If there is no cooperation after asking and 2 verbal warnings, then the mayor will ask security officers to remove only those individuals who are causing the disruption. Security personnel should not engage in any way, but only escort them from the council chambers. If individuals refuse to leave, security personnel shall warn them that they are trespassing and that the next step will be arrest by a Tempe police officer. Tempe officers may have to arrest if individuals refuse to leave. Charges for trespass and disorderly conduct may apply, as well as other charges. Should anyone be asked to be removed, the mayor will recess the meeting.
Thank you very much. We're now going to play a video conveying the City of Tempe's Native Land Acknowledgement Statement.
We wish to acknowledge that Tempe is the homeland of the Native people who have inhabited this landscape since time immemorial. These ancestral lands of the O'odham, known as Pima, Peeposh, known as the Maricopa, and their ancestors extend far beyond our city. This land continues to be spiritually connected to the O'odham of the Salt River Pima, Maricopa Indian Community, and Gila River Indian Community. We accept the responsibility of stewarding those places and solemnly pledge to consider this commitment in every action.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move to item number 4, meeting minutes, and tonight I'll be assisted by Councilmember Amberg. Councilmember Amberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I submit for approval City Council minutes 4A1 and 4A2.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Amberg and seconded by Councilmember Chin. Please vote. Aye. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. Next up, item 4B, acceptance of board, commission, and committee meeting minutes. Councilmember Amberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the acceptance of board, commission, and committee meeting minutes from 4B1 through 4B13.
It's been moved by Councilmember Amberg and seconded again by Councilmember Chin. Please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. All right, next up, item 5, reports and announcements. I've got a few this evening. And actually, I will go down to the front for these. All right, so first up here is item 5A1, which is the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials 2024 National Award of Merit for the City of Tempe's Hometown for All program. I'd like to now bring up Irma Hollenby Kane, Christopher Grossbeck to also come and accept this award. All right, so the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, otherwise known as NARO, established in 1933, is a membership organization of more than 26,000 housing and community development professionals throughout the United States who work to advance the creation of strong, sustainable, and affordable communities. The NARO Agency Awards Program gives national recognition to the achievement and innovation of NARO members to provide additional opportunities to inform the public of the best in housing and community development, and to create a resource bank of information on significant innovative activities performed by housing and redevelopment agencies and community development departments. Since 1989, NARO has honored more than 6,000 programs. This year, the City of Tempe's Hometown for All initiative has been honored nationally with an award of merit for its significant work in expanding affordable housing in Tempe. The Hometown for All initiative is designed to create more affordable housing in Tempe through a dedicated funding source and developer donations, is the driving force behind Tempe's broader affordable housing strategy. Tempe's initiative will be included in NARO's Best Practices database, offered as a resource bank on significant innovative activities. All of the winning programs are included in the 2024 Awards of Merit catalog. So I want to thank Irma, Christopher, and our entire housing services team for all the great work they do in housing and, of course, promoting the City of Tempe's Hometown for All program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, next up, item 5A2, Public Relations Society of America Copper Anvil Awards. And I'm going to call forward Chris Baxter Ging, who's got to be, there she is. So the Communication and Marketing Office entered 2 projects to the annual Public Relations Society of America contest this year. Both won a prize. A Copper Anvil Award is considered one of the highest honors in the public relations industry. Entries are judged on how well they meet professional standards and overall quality. The first award went to the communication team, who won a Copper Anvil for their work informing the community about the renovation and opening of Clark Park. The award nomination stated, "Neighborhood community centers bring people together." When an opportunity arose for Tempe to build a new park, community center, and pool in the city's Clark Park neighborhood, it was a moment to be relished. This campaign successfully documented, shared, and celebrated the project from construction to completion, building excitement with the community and showcasing the city's capital investments through integrated communication efforts. Savannah Driscoll was the PIO, or Public Information Officer, for this project, and Eddie Garcia shot video, and Martha Garner created the graphics. So I want to also say, too, that the team then won another award of merit, as we talked about, for a feature story by Susie Steckner, who's also one of our public information officers, that showed a homeless man who used Tempe services to find his way to a more successful life. The nomination stated, "Keith Holmes' world spun from homeless to housed with huge city support. Safe shelter, employment, housing. The city needed to tell his story. Residents had reported that addressing homelessness was their top priority, and city investments were paying off. We showed our progress through Keith. The media followed, amplifying our success." Next year, which is right around the corner, of course, the communication team intends to enter 1 award category per team member to not only recognize the overall quality of work, but also to call attention to the projects that our entire city moves forward each and every day. So congratulations to Chris Baxter Ging and the entire communications and marketing team for all of your efforts. Thank you so much.
Please. Get everybody in tighter.
Is Jim working the camera?
3, 2, 1. Thank you. Job at risk. There may be some other.
Oh, I was just informed of something, actually. I didn't give Irma and Christopher the award. And part of your job as mayor is if you actually go home with the award or the proclamation, you are clearly failing at life. So I'm going to bring Irma and Christopher back up here to take a photo with this. So. Come on up. Thank you to Kara, our wonderful clerk, for the.
I wondered who's that.
I thought it was mine.
You hold it.
No, you won't. Stop it.
All right. Big smiles. One more time. 1, 2, 3. And one more like that. Gotcha.
Thank you. You don't want this?
No, you got it. Just want to say as a note too, and Irma said, why don't you take it, Mayor? And the fact of the matter is, I say this all the time, the staff really are the unsung heroes in this city. We get an opportunity here as policymakers to come and set the tone and direction for the city of Tempe, but it's the staff who's here 40, 50, many times 60 hours a week, working mornings, nights, and weekends to really make the city move forward in an exceptionally positive fashion, led by our city manager. So I wanted to thank each and every one from staff who's either here in the audience or watching at home for being such exceptional people and really for making this the best city to work, live, or raise a family. Next up here, my last item is 5A3, which is the NASCAR Championship Month proclamation. And do I have Chantel Carson? Yes, come on up. So this proclamation reads, whereas auto racing provides an exciting sporting experience to be enjoyed by families across generations. And whereas the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing was founded in 1948 and is considered one of the top-ranked motorsports organizations in the world. And whereas each year NASCAR sanctions more than 1,500 races in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and Europe. And whereas NASCAR has had a presence in the Valley of the Sun since 1977. And whereas in 2020, the Valley of the Sun and Phoenix Raceway were selected to host the NASCAR Championship Weekend at the newly remodeled and state-of-the-art Phoenix Raceway, and as such would crown 4 different drivers in 4 different series of NASCAR racing, culminating in the NASCAR Cup Championship. And whereas NASCAR Championship Weekend attendees would number close to 100,000 persons for the weekend and would positively impact economic development across all cities and towns in the Phoenix metro area. And whereas the local communities, small and large businesses, and the entire region made such an impression that NASCAR awarded the championship race to the Valley of Sun and Phoenix Raceway in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and what do you think's next? 2025. And whereas these championship events are broadcast to tens of millions of people across the nation and around the world, generating $473 million each year in revenue for Arizona and local economies, while also generating billions of social media impressions worldwide. Now, therefore, I, Corey Woods, Mayor of the City of Tempe, Arizona, do hereby declare November 2024 as NASCAR Championship Month in Tempe, Arizona. All right, next up we have item 5B, City Manager's Reports and Announcements. Madam City Manager.
No announcements this evening. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you so much. Let me go ahead and get situated here. That means I've moved to item number 6, public appearances. According to the Arizona open meeting law, the City Council may only discuss, respond to, or take action on matters listed elsewhere on this agenda for discussion and legal action. The purpose of the open call to the public is to allow individuals to address the City Council on any issue within the jurisdiction of the City Council. No person shall speak more than once, and there is a limit of 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers present at the podium must state their name and city of residence and provide a speaker card. Members of the public shall refrain from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks and from becoming boisterous while addressing the City Council or while attending the meeting. Speakers will be taken first come, first serve in the order in which the cards are received. Speakers' visual aids and appearances by phone or recordings are not allowed. The City Council is prohibited by state law from discussing, responding to, or taking action on matters raised during the call to the public, even if asked to do so by a member of the public, so long as the subject discussed by the speaker is not listed as a specific agenda item for council's consideration for discussion and legal action. Individual members of the council may respond to criticism made by speakers, ask staff to review a matter, or request a matter to be placed on a future agenda. With that said, once again, I will read these in the order in which I received them this evening. First up is Mario Martinez. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence.
Good evening. My name is Mario Martinez. I live in Tempe. Corey, as well as all council members, take an oath to uphold the law and not to violate it. On October 9th of this year, the Arizona Attorney General ruled that 3 illegal City Hall meetings occurred in 2022 during the Coyotes campaign under Corey's mayoral approval. Corey is always grandstanding about being the first African-American mayor of Tempe. In terms of legal history, Corey is also the first mayoral knave of any race who was officially ignorant enough to get popped on 3 illegal City Hall meetings by the Arizona Attorney General. Although Corey cravenly tries to deflect the blame to the prior city manager, Corey approved the social media monitoring program, referred to many as the City Hall spy program. Corey tried to conceal it from the public view by discussing it in closed executive sessions, adhering to his usual standard evasive protocol. Only after the AG report was immediately publicized on television and other media sources was the AG report finally prominently disclosed on the City Hall website. The minutes of the subject executive session meetings disclose exactly who was at these illegally held meetings. The current and past city managers and the past city attorney were all there. Corey officially approved their employment contracts and they work for him. Corey made sure that the mayor and current developer attorney Hugh Hallman, who supported the Coyotes proposal and who handed out thousands of dollars in campaign contributions, got a special invite to these illegal meetings. While Corey did not allow the public the same opportunity as Hallman, Corey screwed the public taxpayers for the public resources used for the City Hall meetings, the $32,000 spent for the social media monitoring program, the over $28,000 billed at over $450 an hour, pocketed by an outside law firm that responded to the AG investigation. As our tax dollars go down Corey's public drain hole, City Hall has failed to comply with all the AG requirements. This includes public disclosure about the subject contents of the illegal meetings. This is not acceptable. And Corey, finally, I'd like to say that I have some outstanding public requests that I have yet to be fulfilled, and it's your responsibility to make sure that they are fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have David Sokolowski. I believe is virtual this evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yep. My name is David Sokolowski. I live in Tempe. Tempe should not restrict affordable housing within 100 feet of a single family home. And it doesn't make sense to have a standard that is higher than what is currently allowed. That defeats the purpose of a density bonus program. Why does Tempe have a double standard when it comes to affordable housing? Even if it does not impact the creation of affordable housing, what is the purpose? Is it because of classism? If we had a 100-foot buffer, many of the market rate projects wouldn't have happened. And I believe this will restrict the housing supply. It's hard enough getting affordable housing to pencil out, and this 100-foot buffer would exclude many properties in Tempe from redevelopment. This limits the max potential for affordable housing, particularly on small lots, and it's possible that Tempe doesn't build any affordable housing at all. We need up to 30,000 low-income units by 2050, and HB 2297 gives Tempe the ability to require inclusionary zoning. That means we need to leverage this to the best of our ability. If that means building 300,000 units on 40 square miles of land, then that's what we need to do. This is our only option because Tempe can't afford to spend $200 million per year. We need to meet the expectations of SB 1162 for housing needs assessment and eliminate any deficiencies in housing for our city. The state is taking away local control, and Tempe opposed it. People want to preserve the character of their neighborhood, but our cities need housing. Every city in our state will need to contribute their fair share. SB 1162 is going to show the state that Tempe will need 200 years to build affordable housing. If I'm wrong, Tempe should show us its housing plan. But Tempe doesn't have a housing plan, and the city is in denial. The state will come back with a builder's remedy. That means automatic approval until we produce the units. Allowing development now will serve as a strong defense to prevent the use of a builder's remedy in Tempe. We need to mass produce affordable housing at scale or risk losing local control forever. It's unacceptable for Tempe to have a double standard that only applies to affordable housing and not market rate projects. It's unacceptable to have arbitrary standards on development, which are not based on the health, safety, or the general welfare of our community. Tempe is supposed to be a leader in affordable housing, and it's unacceptable to have a 200-year timeline. That's negligent. A builder's remedy is the only way to get the entire state rowing in the same direction, because most cities are incapable of being objective while solving a statewide housing crisis. You have a responsibility to make sure that we build affordable housing, and it's very clear that Tempe should not have 100-foot buffers from single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker I have is Elba Quintero. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Woods. Good evening to each of you city council members. Good evening to Ms. Rosa Inchausti. And good evening to all of you here present. My name is Elba Quintero. I am a resident of Tempe and have called Tempe my home for over 55 years. I am here tonight to present to you my thoughts, my feelings, and facts related to trees, palms, shrubs, and wildlife. And yes, I am talking about the 44 acres with all its greenery and beauty of Shalimar Golf Course. I know you have heard over and over about the probable sale of Shalimar and the very strong objection of the Shalimar neighborhood to the sale. We object not because we have anything against the Shalimar owners or their right to sell. We object to the destruction of trees, wildlife, and the density of housing being proposed, which does not, I repeat, does not go over with our present community and our city's plans for shade and beautification. If you allow the rezoning of Shalimar, you will be allowing the destruction of more than 150 trees, 162 palms of California and Mexican palms, and over 300 shrubs, including oleanders, bougainvilleas, lantanas, and Arizona yellow bells. This destruction of trees and shrubs does not go with the plans my city has for a better place to live, does not go with increasing greenery and decreasing urban heat islands. Trees offer many benefits to humans and wildlife. Trees significantly reduce stress and fatigue. Trees provide beauty and help us feel peaceful, restful, and serene. Have any of you ever sat under a tree and heard the sound the leaves make? Isn't that a noise peaceful? Trees bring natural elements and wildlife into our surroundings. All of these increase the quality of life of any community. One tree alone in 20 years of its life can remove from the environment 2,373 pounds of carbon dioxide and much, much more.
I'm sorry, that's time.
So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quintero. Appreciate it. The next speaker I have is Trudy Mussigman. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Trudy Musicman. I'm here on behalf of Safe Shalimar. I'd like to say good evening, Mayor Woods and council members. My husband and I own a townhouse on Shalimar Golf Course, and I'm here to ask for your support to stop the rezoning of the golf course. This is a quiet family adult neighborhood, and by approving a zoning change to allow high-density 3-story rentals in the center of the Shalimar district does not benefit or maintain the characteristics of this community. In 2006, when there was a proposal for the city council to consider buying the golf course, the owner quoted, "I'd want to keep as an open space." I would think that was the owner's intent when he purchased the golf course in 1984, and as they were members of the community and lived on the course until recently. The neighborhood feels the same way today as it did in 1984 and 2006 when the covenant was placed. The only thing that has changed is the players have changed sides or new players have joined. We want the zoning to remain as agricultural with one acre homes, in which we as homeowners bought into. This zoning change is only going to benefit the owner and the builder. In addition, the current proposal will kill hundreds of trees that are over 60 years old and misplace all the wildlife that has become dependent on the open space. This does not support the urban forestry, the climate action plan, or the sustainability for the city. There are plenty of unused commercial lots and lots that high density housing can be placed that will not kill our current green space. I appreciate you letting me speak tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. The next speaker I have is Robert Tierney. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Robert Tierney. I'm a resident of Tempe. I've had the privilege of meeting with several of the council members in the past regarding the application as part of the Shalimar Association, the application for rezoning. You've all been very generous, frankly, with your time and your interest. Tonight, however, I'm speaking on my own behalf. My wife and I have lived in the Valley since 2000 and in Tempe for the past 10 years, just a half a mile from the Shalimar Golf Course. As a licensed architect for over 40 years, I've worked across Arizona and presented before the council in the past. Professionally, I feel well qualified to offer my opinion on this rezoning request. I am also very familiar with the property and the surrounding community. In contrast, the project developer's offices are in Scottsdale, and the project architect is based in California. After reviewing the proposal, I believe this project is extremely inappropriate for this location. There's been very little consideration for the site's history or its role in the community over the past 60 years. Shalimar Golf Course has been an essential hub for many Tempe residents, as evidenced by past testimony before this council. And while a walking trail is proposed, there are no details on access or duration of the access provided. To me, replacing 44 acres of green space and wildlife habitat with concrete and asphalt is inexplicable. Additionally, the density of this project is at odds with the surrounding neighborhood. 60% of the proposed 277 units would have a density more than twice of that of the adjacent existing properties, which conflicts with several goals of the general plan. By establishing the public input requirements for all zoning requests, Tempe lawmakers anticipated that cases would occur where strict application of the zoning requirements or general plan would lead to missed opportunities to benefit the city and improve the community. I believe this is the case here. Approving this project would have little benefit for the city, in my opinion. Parcels like this one are rare and valuable, and once lost, they cannot be replaced. Thankfully, the general plan and zoning ordinances do not require approval of every proposal, especially when they are ill-suited as this one. Therefore, I respectfully request that if this application reaches the council for a vote, it be denied. This will allow for a more thoughtful solution to be developed with benefits all the stakeholders. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate
Have a
it.
great evening.
The next speaker I have this evening is Omar Alansari. That's okay. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
So my name is Omar Alansari. I might not come from here. I come from the United Arab Emirates, which is known by most people as Dubai. So I'm here to share a story with the city of Tempe. So life is all about stories. Stories that inspire us, stories that shape us, and stories that define who we are. Let me share a little story about me and the city of Tempe. I came in here from the UAE, from home, carrying a dream, an endless dream of becoming a person of great value to myself, my family, my nation, and the world. My hope was that the United States would give me the knowledge and experience to propel me toward creating a meaningful impact and realizing my vision. But every journey is unique, and every story holds its own value. For me, the turning point came on November 20, 2014, when I attended a meeting organized between the city officials and international students at ASU. I stood up that day and shared my vision for innovation in the city. To my surprise, my vision resonated with someone in the room. That person created an opportunity for me, a path forward that I hadn't imagined. 2 years later, I was part of the city team, working with the Technology and Innovation Committee, bringing my dreams to life. I eventually graduated and returned home to the UAE, but the experience in Tempe stayed with me. As we move forward in life, we begin to understand something profound. Few people truly believe in others, and their impact is immense. For me, that person was Rosa. Rosa, you saw value in my vision when others might have not seen it. You believed in me, and in doing so, you shaped my story. I ask God to guide us all to the right path, assist us, and grant us great success. Thank you, City of Tempe, for being more than just a place, for being a catalyst in my journey. And thank you, Rosa, for showing the power of belief. You reminded me that one person's faith in another can change a life, and I will carry that lesson for me always, with me always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That is the final card I have in the queue here for public appearances, but if there's anyone else in the audience who'd like to address the council, please get my attention now. All right, seeing none, I will move to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda will be considered as a group and will be enacted with one motion by the City Council unless an item is removed for separate consideration. Members of the public may remove public hearing items for separate consideration. Public hearing items are designated as public hearing item at the beginning of the item title. Council members may remove any item for separate consideration or to declare a conflict of interest. If a council member would like to declare a conflict at this time, the city clerk will provide the council member with a disclosure form. If you wish to speak on a public hearing item, please fill out a speaker card and submit your completed card to the city clerk prior to the agenda item coming forward for council discussion. I will call your name when it is your turn for public comment. This evening, the consent agenda is listed as miscellaneous items 7A1 through 7A15, awards of bids and contracts items 7B1 through 7B29, and resolutions items 7C1 through 7C7, 7C9 through 7C20, with the exception of item C2 and also item 7C5. And I should also say I'd like to pull item 7C8 for separate consideration. So once again, all of those items with the exception of items 7C2, 7C5, and 7C8 are going to be on the consent agenda this evening. Once again, any agenda item designated as public hearing item can be removed by a member of the public for separate consideration. If anyone would like to have a public hearing item removed, please get my attention now. All right, seeing none, I'll look to my council colleagues. Are there any agenda items that you'd like to have removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration, with the exceptions, once again, of items 7C2, 7C5, and 7C8? It's been moved by Vice Mayor Vice Mayor Garland. I was looking at her and looking at you at the same time. And seconded by Councilmember Hodge. Please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. All right, so next up here, we're going to go to item 7C2. And item 7C2 is to adopt a resolution approving a request to name the City of Tempe bus shelter located on the northeast corner of Mill Avenue and Broadway Road after former city employee Richard Christopher R.C. Noterer. And this item was pulled by Councilmember Chin. Councilmember Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. R.C. Noterer passed away in 2016. He was a friend to many of us. He was a City of Tempe employee. He was also my Tempe leadership classmate. Like many of our city staff, R.C. cared about his work. He cared about it deeply, and he took to heart his work and the service to our community. He thought he was very intentional about his work in transportation and how it impacted and affected the daily lives of our community members. In Tempe, we don't build widgets, we build a community, and we help our stakeholders in our community together. He was instrumental in creating the Youth Transit Pass program, the Tempe Orbit neighborhood bus circulator system. He was really involved in the Tempe light rail system at its implementation. R.C. walked. He rode his bike, and often at work, he built a trailer behind his bike to help service some of the bus stops as a part of his job. He rode the bus. And when he traveled, he took the train. So he was a big advocate for multimodal transportation. This resolution, if approved, would name a bus stop. R.C.'s regular bus stop, the one he used that's right across from Tempe High School, it would name that bus stop in his honor. And that's a pretty nice thing to do for a regular guy. I want to thank Brian Fellows. He brought this forward, and he worked with a lot of the City of Tempe staff. Brian was a former co-worker of RC's. I just wanted to thank everyone for their work on this. With that, I move item 7C2 forward for approval.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Chin, seconded by Vice Mayor Garland. Comments, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Chin or Councilmember Chin for bringing up RC. RC was someone I worked with for many, many, many years, and he was just an incredible man. And you're right, he rode transportation in one way or the other all the time. And he also walked a lot to check out the streets and the safety of the streets. And he was an inspiration for us all. So he's totally missed, and I am very happy to vote yes on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Anyone else, any further comments? With that, please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. Next up, item 7C5, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the 2024-2026 program partner agreement between the City of Tempe and the AARP Foundation for the AARP Foundation Experience Corps program. This item was pulled by Vice Mayor Garland. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. There are so many incredible programs that our Human Services Department does, and this is just another one of them. I have been to a few events with our Experience Corps group. The Experience Corps group they work with children in our community. Since 2006, they've worked with over 3,000 students to help improve their reading. I'll read to you just a little bit what they write about this group. It says, through Tempe's AARP Foundation Experience Corps programs, students in 1st through 3rd grade who test below grade level reading standards receive one-on-one tutoring twice a week during the school year. Tutors are Experience Corps volunteers who are aged 50 and above. The tutors assist the students in becoming proficient readers by the time they finish their 3rd grade. As a result of this support, students not only enhance their academic skills, but also often display increased self-confidence. The program's intergenerational approach enables children to succeed and allows adult tutors to thrive, ultimately strengthening our community. And I will say, I've seen that on both sides. I have friends of mine who are volunteers, and I have a couple really good friends of mine who have children who have been a part of this program. This works with the Tempe Elementary and Kyrene School Districts. It's an incredible program. I'm so proud of it. I'm so glad that we are a part of this program. And again, just another one of the great things the City of Tempe does. So I would like to move for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Garland, seconded by Councilmember Hodge. Councilmember Adams.
Yes, Peggy Goldman was the gal that started this program. I've known her for 30 years, and we are so fortunate to have this program. And I've done it myself, read to the kids, and they just light up. I would highly recommend anybody that has some extra time on their hands to participate in this program, because it will brighten your day. So I'm happy to support this going forward.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, please vote on item 7C5. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. Next up, item 7C8, adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Tempe and Rio Salado College to establish a Tempe Promise program. I just wanted to make a really quick comment about this. I really appreciate the work with Dr. Kate Smith, the president at Rio Salado College, on this. I know that myself and I know Councilmember Hodge have had conversations with her for a number of years, and she has been really pushing for us to be able to establish this. There are a lot of other cities across the country, including the city directly to our east, Mesa, that has a very successful Mesa College program, College Promise program. And one of the things a lot of us have talked about is there's an Achieve 60 program for the state, which talks about that 60% of the youth who come up in Arizona, we really want them to have the opportunity to succeed in terms of post-secondary education or vocational/trade school. But in the city of Tempe, actually during the 4 years I was off the council then decided to go above and beyond by not just adopting Achieve 60, but Achieve 65. Because the perspective was having the Maricopa Community Colleges District, Arizona State University, and 3 incredible local school districts, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to not only meet, but also exceed the state's goal of Achieve 60 and get to that 65% attainment. And so I know that the establishment of this and this partnership with Rio Salado College is going to continue to provide all of our young people with the opportunity to achieve success in college, career, and life, whatever they may so choose. So I just really wanted to thank Dr. Smith and Rio Salado College and the Maricopa Community Colleges District for the continued partnership with the city of Tempe on what I think is going to be a very pivotal program. So I wanted to say thank you. Councilmember Hodge?
So move.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Hodge.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Adams. Please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. All right, next up here, we're going to move to the item number 8, which is the non-consent agenda. All items listed on the non-consent agenda will be considered separately. Agenda items scheduled for introduction and first public hearing will be heard, but will not be voted upon at this meeting. Agenda items scheduled for second public hearing and final adoption will be voted upon tonight. Council members who may have a conflict of interest may abstain from voting on a matter, and the city clerk will provide the council members with the disclosure form at this time. First up, we have 8A, miscellaneous items, bids, contracts, and resolutions. First item under the section is 8A1, which is to hold a public hearing on the proposed land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plan related to fire, police, parks and recreation, streets, and water and wastewater development fees. I'm going to open up the public testimony portion of this public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on item 8A1? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council members, any comments or discussion? All right, hearing none, just want to state that this was a public hearing item only, and there's no council action required at this time. The next item under the section is 8A2, for which I just received a few cards, which is to hold a public hearing for an appeal of the Development Review Commission's decision to approve 3 use permit standards and a use permit to allow a 3-story single-family residential development for the Brickyard on Rita, located at 1432 South Rita Lane. The appellant is Christian Curry. This is also, I should say, a quasi-judicial item, which means I have a little special announcement here. So the City Council sits as a quasi-judicial body when during hearing appeals. In this situation, the City Council will conduct the public hearing in a similar fashion to that of an appellate court. Pre-meeting contact with the City Council on quasi-judicial matters is prohibited. Any materials or conversations concerning the item shall only be presented to the City Council at the scheduled public hearing. Per the Zoning and Development Code, an appeal shall be limited to the issues raised in the petition, ZDC Section 6-803. Issues not raised in the petition for an appeal are not considered. Tonight's public hearing is an appeal of the Development Review Commission's decision to approve 3 use permit standards and a use permit to allow a 3-story single-family residential development for the Brickyard on Rita, located at 1432 South Rita Lane. The appeal was filed by Christian Curry and meets the legal requirements for an appeal under the ZDC or Zoning Development Code. The original applicant is Genevieve Naud. I hope I got that correct. So we've got an order of operations here. I'm now going to invite Christian Curry, who's the appellant, to make a presentation.
All right. Do we have the presentation up on the screen?
It should be 8A2 with appellant in the file name. It should be on the SharePoint site if you want me to send that to you. Would you send that to me? I don't have access to that.
No worries. I'm just reading over the staff report. Again, just passing the time.
Good time to make annotations.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, you're all good.
I just sent it to you.
And I can use these to move back and forth through, or
There should be a clicker.
Yep, here's the clicker, sorry. Thank you. Oh, I'll just show it and then let's see. Try it, see if it advances. Nope.
advance it. Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening, Mayor Woods, Vice Mayor Garland, and members of council. For the record, my name is Christian Curry, and I'm here today as the appellate for the Brickyard on Rita project, appealing the Development Review Commission's decision that took place back in September. I wanted to kind of go over some of this with you guys and kind of explain the concern that we have, or that I have with that. For background, I am a resident of Tempe Microstates, which is the project just south of the proposed project, as well as the president of their homeowners association. But I'm here today as a concerned resident of the neighborhood. We can move to the next slide. The developer, as you had mentioned, Mayor Woods, is requesting a couple of things. They're requesting a use permit to allow a second-story addition, as well as 3 use permits to offset the required setback for the front, rear, and south setbacks. Next slide. Our main concern, or my main concern, is threefold. As you'll see in several slides down, there's insufficient parking on site for 6 residents and guests. And this brings up some significant issues, especially as it relates to neighborhood safety and well-being. What I'm going to show you as we move through is some just facts and evidence of what we're dealing with now and what will it transpire if there isn't enough parking on site. Next slide, please. And for background, city zoning and development code, to get these use permits, all developers are required to kind of go through these, and in particular, those 5 criteria under E2, explaining why their project won't have an effect on those. And what I want to point your guys' attention to specifically is section F there, where it's burden of proof. The burden of proof for satisfying the aforementioned requirements has to rest on the applicant. So with that being said, the next slide is what the developer kind of states as their proof. The reduction of the west and southern boundary setbacks from 10 feet to 8 feet allows them to provide a garage, as well as 3 additional off-street parking spaces without compromising the functionality of what is essentially a narrow lot. And in that third paragraph, taking into consideration the width of a tiny street, Rita Lane is extremely small, as you'll see in some photos. That limited turnaround opportunity at the end of the street, they're promoting the use of bicycles, scooters, and alternative means of transportation to minimize dependency on vehicles. That's the only proof that is provided regarding why they don't foresee that being an issue. In fact, on the next slide, in the 13 pages of their report, they don't include any other proof, physical proof at all, showing evidence as to why the lack of parking won't create an issue on Rita Lane. These next slides that I'm going to go through are going to show exactly evidence, not hypothetical evidence, but evidence of what has happened on Rita Lane to this date with lack of parking. So with that, we'll go straight to that next slide. The appeal is regarding those 3 use permits on the for the setback requirements. There's a couple options. Obviously, denying the use permits, which would require the developer to develop the property within their standard building guidelines, or the second one, which is one that I would like to see, which is the approval of these use permits. I completely understand that development is inevitable and it promotes growth, but it has to be done responsibly. And in particular, you guys as the decision-making body do have the option under G4 to designate the size, number, location, and or design of vehicle access points or parking areas. And we'd like to place a condition that we need more additional parking on site. What's there right now is just insufficient for the proposed project. And so with that, we'll go to the next slide where it talks about just some stats of Rita Lane. If you haven't been to Rita Lane yourself, there's 29 resident structures on that, 3 duplex style, so about six homes, tiny homes if you think of it that way, 3 single family units, 13 of the micro estate homes, 6 townhomes, which are just in their final part of development, and then 1 apartment complex. The width of Rita Lane in totality is 19 feet, much, much smaller than a standard residential street. There's no street parking. All street parking is 24/7 parking permit required. No sidewalks on the street, putting pedestrians on the street with traffic, and no street lighting. The only light is at the very, very end of Rita Lane. But again, if you're walking at night, that puts you back on the street, and with increased street traffic, you can foresee issues with that. Next slide, please. This is the proposed Brickyard on Rita project, and so they are asking that, what this essentially shows is a couple of things. In their report, they state that there's a 3-car garage, which they classify as what would be considered for resident parking, and then a 3-car driveway to kind of offset some of that street parking as they consider for guests. A couple issues with this, obviously the first one being tandem parking arrangement. As you and I know, tandem parking works great for single families. If you need to go get your son's car and move it out of the way, you can quickly go grab the keys. But it becomes an issue when we're dealing with complete strangers. And this next slide shows exactly what I'm discussing with regards to that. So they are proposing that it's being advertised as student housing. There's going to be 6 bedrooms in there. Dorm-style bedrooms. If we were to say that all 6 residents have cars, which is very likely, we live in a large city, Phoenix, the metro area. Considering all 6 residents have vehicles, what you saw on that first slide was guest parking on the driveway, resident parking in the garage. You see here, if it's just residents, they use the entirety of both guest and residential parking, leaving absolutely no room for guests whatsoever. Mayor Woods, if we all kind of lived if we all took this for an example, and we're all strangers here, we all lived in the same place. If you were in the garage and I was parked behind you and I was out of town, how would you be able to get out of, your residential spot in an emergency if you have one? You could very well say that residents in that type of a situation may just vote to park on the street at that point and not use the driveway. So as you can see, there's just no room for guests, and we have a clear example of that situation right now in that next slide. Yeah, no, you're good. Tempe Microestates is a perfect example of that. There are 13 homes, 18 residents, and each home is assigned 1 individual parking spot. Obviously, there's more residents than there are parking spots, and we have to deal with that situation. There are couples there who are forced to have to park elsewhere. We share 3 guest spots amongst the 13 homes. If multiple people have guests over, they're forced to park somewhere, anywhere. And as you'll see on this next slide, that is an issue. This is exactly an issue when you have a project that is approved without adequate parking. This is the entire neighborhood of where we're at. The star is the proposed project, Rita Lane. All the red is 24/7, no parking at all. The yellow is permit parking, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Rita Lane right there towards the middle. The blue line is 24/7 permit parking. And what I want to point your guys' attention to is the 2 small green sections, and we can zoom in on that on that next slide. These 2 sections, the one that's at the very top of Rita Lane and to the east of Rita Lane, are the only 2 sections in that entire neighborhood where you can park, where it's open parking for residents, for neighbors, for students, anyone and everyone. And as you can imagine, being that those are the only 2 sections, it's full all the time. The next slide shows parking in the middle of the day. What you saw there, that green line, completely full, middle of the day. You would think that it would be empty at night. Next slide shows nighttime, 11 p.m., packed full as well. Residents in Tempe microestates that have 2 vehicles are sometimes forced to park a quarter of a mile away just to get to the safety of their own home, which no one should have to do, walking down dark streets in the middle of the night on the street. And that leads me to the next slide there, which is alternative means of transportation. The developer is proposing alternative means of transportation as their solution to this, encouraging bikes, encouraging scooters. And I think in a perfect world that would make sense, but unfortunately we don't live in a perfect world. On the next slide, Tempe microstates is a perfect example of that. It was built under the same exact principles that we would use alternative means of transportation. As you saw in those earlier slides, we don't have enough parking spots for all of us. When we first moved in, we did use some scooters and bikes. Those got stolen within the first month. Since then, we've decided not to do that, as you can imagine. And the developer had mentioned that that they will use or encourage that, and that ASU is a quarter of a mile down the street. I totally understand that, and I'm sure students do use alternative means of transportation to get to campus. In fact, on that next slide, we can use that as an example. Newberry Terrace Estates, which is the homes directly to the east of Tempe Micro. There's 51 homes in there. According to the assessor's website, 7 are classified as secondary residences, being visitation homes. 7 are classified as primary residences, being that you permanently live there. And 37, a shocking 37 of those homes are classified as rentals, many of whom are considered to be students. And again, if we use that idea of alternative means of transportation, we would see probably that there's not very many vehicles using Newberry Terrace Estates. But the clear matter of the fact is, if we go to the next slide, this is Newberry Terrace Estates in the middle of the night. Cars lined up and down the street, driveways full, garages full. It is evident that even though there's 37 homes being used as rentals, many of whom, again, are students, packed full of cars. To put that in perspective, again, I'm sure that they're using, alternative means to get to ASU. But if we go to the next slide, to get to the grocery store from 1432 South Rita Lane, the proposed project, Walmart is almost 2 miles away. Trader Joe's, a little over a mile away. Tempe Marketplace, full of different activities, 3 miles away. On the next slide, if you need to go anywhere other than Tempe, downtown Scottsdale, 10 miles away. Downtown Phoenix, 15.5 miles away. It's not close to get to any of these locations via alternative transportation like scooters or bikes. And I think this next one, I think we can you've all been to it, Costco. That is 7 miles away and not easy to get to. And as you and I know, when you go there, you're not coming out of there with one thing, you're coming out there with a box of stuff. It's inevitable that you have to use a vehicle to get to any of these locations. And that really leads to the last point, and the one that I really want to emphasize the most is safety and well-being. These aren't hypothetical situations. I mean, yeah, we can go to that next slide one more. These are issues that we're experiencing today. Trash services, again, as you heard, 19 feet in length is Rita Lane, or in width. Trash services, great picture right here, uses almost the entirety of the street to have to get through. And this is with no vehicles in the middle of the day parked on the street. There's been several occasions when construction has been in the area on those 6 homes at the very, very end of Rita, where we haven't been able to get our trash picked up because the trash can serve, the Tempe services just can't get to the end of the street on Rita Lane. This next one really, really showed us the issue that we're having. In May of 2024, we had an EMS first responder incident at the end of Rita Lane on one of the homes. And this really clearly shows the issue. On the right there, you see a vehicle blocking access to first responders. On the left, police scattered around the parking lot. It took EMS a minute or two to get around that vehicle. The ambulance kind of had to work its way around. You can barely see it here, but in front of that truck that's parked on the street, the fire truck can't even get through, to get to the other side. In fact, first responders had to cut down a street sign at the base to be able to turn around the ambulance. Unfortunately, the gentleman did pass away that evening at the hospital. And as you and I know, in emergency situations, every second matters. And when you have a ton of vehicles parking on the street because of a lack of parking, that creates issues, and that really gave us and alarmed us as to what could be happening. Lastly, I have a friend who lives there, and he uses paratransit every single day to get to and from his house. If vehicles and student vehicles are parking on that street, that paratransit bus will not be able to make it all the way to the end. Essentially, we're telling him to have to wheel his wheelchair down the center of Rita Lane to get to his transportation if there's vehicles parking on that street. Next slide. So at the DRC hearing, to say that, to tell me that discomfort is the catalyst you need, to say that this is an issue of discomfort, to say that this is an issue of inconvenience, it was shocking to me, because I think these issues that were raised aren't issues of comfort. We're not saying we need more parking space because it's a good idea, just have extra additional parking spaces. What we're saying is that this isn't an issue of convenience. This is an issue of safety and well-being. We're asking for the bare minimum here. If you go to the next slide, not to my understanding, has there been any public support for this project. There's multiple where you see that have brought up concerns regarding this. Tempe Micro Estates has all 13 homeowners that signed onto a petition, all unanimously saying that we're in support of go ahead and build, but do so responsibly, and that means doing additional parking on site. And really that brings me to, again, that last slide, which was echoed as earlier. So again, I'm not against building in any way, but it needs to be done responsibly. And the way that this is being currently proposed, the builder's taking home the entire enchilada and not sharing with anyone. They're going to leave us with the repercussions for decades to come with a lack of parking in the neighborhood. We're going to end up having students parking. You were a student at one point. I was a student at one point. Having friends come over was a part of life, right? Having a significant other was a part of life. And if you have 6 residents that are using all 6 parking spaces, where do those guests end up parking? And they very well will end up parking on the street, as we've seen already in our neighborhood. They'll end up parking in our parking lot, as we've seen already in our neighborhood. So all we ask is that if you do approve this, that you approve it with conditions, just requiring the developer to be realistic with parking. If you're going to have 6 rooms, you need 6 parking spots, and you need additional for guest parking at a very bare minimum. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Should we go questions later on in the presentation, or?
Mayor, that's up to you, whether you want to.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions right now? I will say that Mr. Curry is going to have the opportunity to come back up afterwards. So does anyone have any questions at this moment? Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we want to see if there are any comments from city staff or council members that would like to ask questions of staff regarding this project. So I guess I see Jeff Tamulevich and Ryan Levesque. I'll see if they can maybe step up here and see if we have any members of council who have questions for them. Or I'll start first, Jeff, with you and Ryan to see if there's anything that you would like to add before we go to council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, we don't have a presentation set tonight, but we are here for any questions that you might have.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. Council, any comments for Jeff or Ryan right now, or questions? Yes, Councilmember Amberg?
Mr. Mayor, Jeff, of the remaining homes that are on that street, I mean, I don't know what it is, but I will tell you what the gentleman previously said, that there is 3 single-family homes that are on there. Are those 3 single-family homes, are they under the same use restrictions as this one? Like, would they be able to tear down their single-family home and also build something like this?
They would have the same requirements. It depends on the zoning, but yes, they would be able to have the same abilities as this development would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams?
The street looked really dark at night. Is that, I mean, it looked like there was only one light. Is that true? Or were there some burnt out? Or I'm concerned about safety, obviously.
Sure, understood. That's a question that we could certainly ask our traffic folks.
Okay, that'd be great.
I do recall there is a actual street light just south of this property between the Tempe Micro Estates and this subject property, but there might be other areas that might be lacking the adequate lighting levels throughout the whole entire street.
Okay, and what's your opinion on this project?
Well, at the time when staff received the application and the request, staff recommended approval of the request. The specific use permit standards, it wasn't design review. The specific use permit requests were for expansion of the width, the lot coverage area for the development itself, and the nature of building 2 stories or more for the site. The specific issues, concerns regarding parking is that they are currently meeting their code required parking of 3 spaces for a single-family dwelling unit that has 6 or more bedrooms. And it just so happens that the driveway would serve to accommodate additional guests, but it's not required parking for the driveway.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else on council, questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, thank you, right, appreciate it. Okay, now I'm going to look to the original applicant, Genevieve Naud, to make a presentation. Oh, and let there be light. Man.
Tone it down.
It was like the opposite of mood lighting. It was like,
The remote should work.
yeah, it's still, yeah, Jason, it's a little still too bright here. There's something, but you can begin. Did I get your last name correct?
Yes, it's Genevieve Nordia.
Nordia, okay.
But
Thank
US
you.
paperwork does not allow for the little accent on the E. So I've kind of become Nord by default.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilwoman, Councilmen. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project to you. I have consolidated and made it a lot briefer to deal with the issue at hand, which is really this parking issue. The area has already been identified, so I won't waste any time on identifying the location. This is the property looking, looking north along Rita Lane and looking south along Rita Lane. This was taken on a random weekday at about 10 in the morning when I went to see my northern neighbor who represents some of the residents, or claims to represent the residents on Rita Lane. The zoning is R4 with the lot size. We can get 1.87 dwelling units per lot, which is how we ended up with a single dwelling unit. We are comfortably within our maximum coverage, being at 44%, and our parking ratios, we satisfy what is required by the City of Tempe in terms of parking bays. The application for the reduction of setbacks was actually, I mean, the irony is not lost on me. We requested these setbacks so that we could actually accommodate parking on the lot. We got the 3 parkings in by reducing the southern, and then we requested a reduction in the western setback so we could actually have some functional space left on the main floor. And if you look at the size of this lot, the only way to get additional parking in, once you allow for a 24-foot wide driveway, you can possibly get a 4th car in without turning this into a parking garage. So we feel that we have really maximized the parking on this lot to try and alleviate the pressure on Rita Lane. That said, we're also trying to encourage the use of alternate means of transport with looking at Tempe's vision for the future and the encouragement of using alternative and sustainable means of transport. Here we can briefly just see the 6 bedrooms, all of them en suite, catering for mature, responsible students. Yes, who can dictate that, but nonetheless, we will try. There are some of those. Staying in this environment, they are in very close proximity to ASU. When you look at students, I have a son who graduated from ASU last year. The cost of parking permits and the cost of parking in any public parking structure near ASU it's expensive. And yes, it causes discomfort. The same for parking anywhere in Tempe. You really need to make use of the parking garages. And what that discomfort does is it encourages people to start looking at alternative options. Due to the proximity to ASU, and with Tempe being categorized as a gold level bicycle-friendly community, it means that we can actually look at non-motorized means of transportation to be utilized. You know, making a 6-lane highway into a 12-lane highway only solves the problem for so long, and then it just fills up. So you've got to create those boundaries, and the level of discomfort will mean that people with high demands on needing multiple cars will look elsewhere, because if that's important to you and you can't be accommodated on the lot, then you would not rent at that location. Ideally, I would prefer to see less parking bays on the lot and not more. So the question we have to say, and it's a principle that I suppose can be debated ad nauseum, is do we focus on catering for the students by providing bike or skateboard racks, giving them quick and easy access to ASU, and try and be in keeping with the vision for a more sustainable, cost-effective and healthy mode of transportation? Or do we have to now provide parking in excess of the city's current requirements and increase the traffic down this narrow road by introducing more cars down the street and actually exacerbating the problem? So thank you for your consideration. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Amberg. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You say in your application that you're going to encourage the alternative means of transportation. Like, how are you going to do that? If you've got 3 parking spaces that you're saying are for the residents and the other 3 are for guests, are you going to hand out 3 parking permits for the first 3 of the 6 bedrooms that apply for it, and then the other 3 either just don't get to park there, or they're going to have to find alternative means of transportation? Or will all 6 of those residents, if they all end up having 6 cars, will all 6 of them be using the 3 that you're designated for the people that are living there and the 3 that you're kind of pseudo-designating as guest parking? I mean, if you've got 6 residents that are in those bedrooms and there's 6 cars, where are the guests going to park?
I think the view of that at the moment is to currently say the privilege of having a parking space requires additional financial outlay. So those people that are renting an ensuite room will rent the room as such, or be renting that space, and the parking bay comes at a surcharge, and there are only so many bays available for rental. Once that has been met, the remaining parking bays are for guest parking.
So just to follow up, if you end up renting and there's 6 and all 6 of them have a car, where are those other 3 going to park?
Well, this is where you come to the stage where if you are looking to rent an apartment and there is no parking available for you, then that may not be the right apartment for you to rent. It just becomes, it does not suit your requirements.
So are you going to enforce that? So you've handed out 3 parking spots for those 3 bay areas, and you're requiring a surcharge, and the 4th person that is renting one of those bedrooms also has a car and then just starts parking, in tandem behind, one of their friends that's renting another room. Are you going to enforce them parking there all the time, or are you going to require that they find another place to park?
All of these requirements are going to obviously be outlined in the rules and guidelines for the residents, for the house policies and rules of living on the premises.
So what are those rules and guidelines going to say?
That you can there's only permit parking on Rita 24/7. As landowners, the property is entitled to a certain number of parking passes for the 24/7 permit parking. That can be utilized as part of guest parking, and the other 3 parking bays will be allocated to those residents, and the remaining 3 will make use of alternative means of transport. It will be written into their lease agreement.
Thank you. Councilmember Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to clarify in my head, so I'm going to rephrase a question that I heard from Councilmember Amberg, and maybe you can answer it this way for me. I know that there are some complexes or homes for rent that may let potential residents know before they sign a lease that there is no parking or there are no cars or whatever it may be. My understanding, did I hear this, that you would let them know ahead of time before they signed a lease that there was limited parking or no parking available?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor Garland?
I have a follow-up to that. So then what restricts them from parking on the street where there's so very little parking?
Because it's a 24/7 permit-only parking on Rita Lane.
But if those permits are already given out and the streets are already full, then the guests will be parking in that small limited green space that they were showing us in the last pictures. It just seems like it's...
It is, I can't pretend there isn't a problem. There is a problem. The reality is if we had to hypothetically add an additional 3 parking bays on the lot, these will also be, because of the width of the lot, these will also be creating now not tandem, but 3 cars depth. So we are exacerbating the problem by adding additional parking in excess of what is tabled in the parking requirements for a property of this size. So, and if we turn it into where you have a driveway and then you park at 90 degrees, we can get a 4th car and we may be able to get a 5th car in. So we just, the realities of maneuvering a car on such a small lot means that you now end up with an area of space that's dedicated purely to access and maneuvering. You're not actually gaining the benefit of the parking.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, I just want to point out that Tempe is trying to get people out of their cars, and we have the best transportation in the entire valley. Tempe does. Not any other city, we have the best.
That has become evident as I've been spending more and more time in the city, yes.
Yes, and we're very proud of that fact. So my preference is to get people out of their cars, and if they're students, a lot of students don't have cars, and they're fine going around on their scooters or walking or riding their bicycles or we have Orbit that goes all over the city. I mean, we've got it all. We've got buses, streetcar, light rail. I mean, there's nothing no stone we haven't unturned on this. So I guess, I'd rather see less parking and have them walk to school or do our other forms of transportation. So.
And architecturally speaking, I feel the space that is now being allocated to 3 parking bays in a place of this nature would be far better utilized as a common area for students to interact than parking 3 cars. So in an ideal world, or in my ideal world, and architecturally speaking, I would rather lose those 3 parking bays, have the 3 guest spaces in front where your Uber and your Lyft or your can be accommodated, and integrate that space into the living space for the residents. But we're trying to find middle ground here, and it's a tough one.
Exactly. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. Any other council members, any additional comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Amberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess what I'm hearing, and you have, stood up there and said that there could be a problem here. The problem is the number of bedrooms versus the number of parking spots. So if you can't increase the number of parking spots, I guess then the only alternative would be to decrease the number of bedrooms. And that way it's a decrease in the number of people who are going to be parking there and a decrease in the number of guests that are going to be coming.
My response to that would be, we're now lowering the density, we're now lowering the number of students in favor of the car, which is now taking preferential treatment again in a situation where the city of Tempe is trying to encourage alternative means of transport with bicycling and using scooters and that. So, now you are reducing the density in an area where the density is being increased to accommodate more students, and that is being done so that students can each have a car. And not all students have cars. Not all students can afford to pay the permit parking So it's that dilemma. It's what do you prioritize? Do you prioritize the dominance and the prevalence of the vehicle, or do you create choices where people that embrace these alternative modes of transport have got a place to stay that is very close to the university and make use of these sustainable means of transport? And that's the balance. And it's a principled decision about which way does the city want to proceed with this.
Just one quick question for you too. So can you once again kind of restate the concern about adding the additional spaces? I know you talked about it earlier, but I just wanted to see if you could restate that about, why the concern would be just to add, a couple of additional spaces for the purpose of sort of satisfying this concern that's been raised.
It's really just the accessibility. The lot itself is particularly narrow. We had to reduce the setback so that we could fit 3 side-by-side cars, which means if we have to obliterate the main floor and say, right, all we are providing is a staircase up to the 2nd floor and the rest is allocated purely to parking, we're not actually gaining that much more space because of the need for a car to maneuver in and out of a parking bay. The only other way of accommodating it, if you want to maximize it, is to stack them in behind each other as if they're a ferry going across the sea. And by doing that, you are now bringing more traffic, more cars down the narrow street, and making it actually more complex for these cars to maneuver in and out of the lot. So we feel we have found that sweet spot between satisfying the city's code requirements for the number of parking bays for a building of that size, with the need to encourage alternative and sustainable means of transport.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead then and open up the public testimony portion of this public hearing. I've got 4 cards in my hand, and once again, I will call people up in the order in which I received them. The first speaker this evening is Matthew Salinger. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. Is it still 3 minutes, Mr. Anderson? Or is it unlimited?
It's at your discretion, Mayor.
Let's do 3 minutes to keep it consistent, I guess. Mr. Salinger, good to see you.
Yeah. My name is Matthew Salinger. I'm a resident of Tempe. I'm here representing CVAC, Citizens for a Vibrant Apache Corridor. Thank you all, council members, mayor, vice mayor. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the proposed design for a 3-story apartment building on Rita Lane. I stand in somewhat opposition to this design, primarily due to the significant concerns surrounding its setbacks and its overall feasibility. First, the setbacks create an awkward development that poses challenge both for construction and its intended use. The setbacks are simply too small to allow for efficient use of exterior space for 6 to 12 people that will be staying in there, because there are 6 bedrooms. Not everybody's going to be single, right? So there could be as many as 12 people actually living there. Likewise, the kitchen and common spaces are not large enough for 6 to 12 inhabitants without being extremely crowded. Additionally, with only 3 parking spaces allocated for 6 bedrooms, we are already setting ourselves up for potential congestion and inconvenience, as cars parked on the driveway outside the planned garage will overhang any future sidewalk in most likelihood. The design does not adequately consider the needs of the residents of the surrounding community, as Christian brought up first. Moreover, the limited space on the property raises serious questions about construction logistics. How will the developers stage construction materials on the site while also accommodating this necessary scaffolding around to put the siding on 3 stories up? Additionally, the street itself lacks the capacity to support staging or material storage, which could lead to disruptions and safety hazards. I believe that apartment-style developments should adhere to larger property sizes than the one this one has. I think one of the issues that we're facing with this is that there's kind of they found a glitch in the planning matrix, where they were able to do something that a lot of us feel is probably inappropriate, but is going to be allowed. And so I think that we need to rethink some of the various different aspects of certain situations of planning. Because if you imagine that the rest of Rita Lane were developed on both sides of the street with this exact model, that would be a horrible precedent. That would make for a really bad experience in that tiny, narrow little road. Also, furthermore, larger developments can achieve higher economic yields through economies of scale, benefiting both the developers and the city. This approach would ultimately lead to a more sustainable and community-friendly development on Rita Lane. As a Tempe architect, I'm working to improve developments in the city through a rubric that brings up a myriad of ways to improve developments via conversations that can include the community development department, neighborhoods, and developers themselves. In conclusion, I urge the council to reconsider this proposal. We need to prioritize thoughtful, efficient designs that enhance our community rather than create logistical challenges. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The next speaker I have is Philip Amorosi. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council and staff. This is a clear case. I'm Phil Amorosi. I live in Tempe, all right? It's a clear case of even though you can, you shouldn't. I'm against the brickyard on Rita, not because of its name, because there is no brick and there is no yard, but I'm against it because the development department and the DRC are contributing to the ongoing detrimental decline of the Gentilly neighborhood. If the city is serious about sustainable, healthy neighborhoods, then you got to reject this project. Rita Lane, as other streets in the neighborhood, are all dead ends because of the railroad tracks. And Rita Lane, as been stated, is only 19 feet wide. As a comparison, my street, I live right down the next neighborhood, is 30 feet wide. And that gets scary when there's 2 cars parked and 2 cars got to pass each other. I can't imagine the 19-foot. And Rita has no sidewalks, so pedestrians have to walk in the street, which is getting more and more dangerous. It was doable when they only had single-family homes or they had the single-family, 1-bedroom apartments that were there. That was fine. But now the city's opening the floodgates. You see approvals of multi 3-story apartments and boarding houses like the Brickyard, which is hiding behind the single-family permit process, even though it's 6 bedrooms and baths with a 3-car garage. Developers not hiding that it's going to be student housing. So I know from living in that area, there is definitely a potential of 12 people living in that apartment complex, plus their guests. Plus, think of all the delivery trucks, because everybody orders stuff online now. You got to think about the total amount of traffic that's going to be coming down that street. And we saw how bad it was for the emergency vehicle. And I also think the city needs to follow its own guidelines. When they put in new developments, you hear about other areas where they have to put in sidewalks, where they have to bury electric lines. And they didn't ask for any of that stuff here. The last big development, I know they put a large metal power pole right in front of this longtime resident's front door. And she complained about it, she objected, but they didn't care. There's now a huge metal pole right in front of her front door because there's no sidewalk. It is close. You wouldn't want that in your front door. Until the city can make the streets wider, put sidewalks in, bury power lines, then they need to not approve these large-scale apartments on tiny lots. A better solution would be if the Hometown for All bought it and put in a single family or a duplex, or even Newtown, because Newtown has already built 2 single-family homes in the Gentilly neighborhood.
I'm sorry, that's
All
time as
Tempe
well.
neighborhoods need to be redeveloped, safe and healthy. This is not it.
Thank you. Next speaker is John Deister. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm John Deister, a resident of Tempe. Actually, I feel that everything has been said really on this already, but I just wanted to emphasize that the safety concerns of walking down Rita Lane. My son works down, is a resident of micro estates, and he walks down the road every day. He's walking down to catch the bus in the dark, in the middle of the street. with more cars on the with more cars parked, you're going to see this much worse. It's going to just exacerbate the problem we have with lack of parking. I also see one of the other residents every day having to drive down from the parking on Spence to pick up his kid to get him to school. So there's no room for some down the street for something that can have 6, 10, 12 cars. Even if some of the residents do decide to ride the bike in or something, are they going to do that all the time? Or when in the middle of the summer? It's just unlikely. So just wanted to say that the concerns that Christian and the other people have raised are very real, and you should reject this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The last card I have is from Joanne Marcus. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Joanne Marcus, City of Tempe. And a lot of what was said, I don't want to repeat, but my concerns are also safety. I didn't realize my husband was going to be speaking before me. I just want to add one thing. The other day, I was driving down the street, and I was super impressed at how tiny it really is and having to go around it. And I really like the new apartment complex, townhouse complex that's been put on the corner. So we don't even know how that's going to affect the street. The 2 things that I want to add is when I am pulling out of Rita Lane and there's that little bit of parking that people can park at, if you have a party and you want to have some guests, it's really, really hard to see. And I'm always pulling out, creeping out, and hoping nobody's coming. Mostly I've been lucky. So I would like that to be revisited. There used to be a speed constraint there that was taken out. The other one was the mailman was there, and he parked in our parking lot, the micro-estate parking lot, and then he went from there and delivered the mail to the rest of the street. That's how narrow it is. Even the mailman won't park on the street. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's all the cards I have on this item this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address the council during the public testimony portion of this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public testimony portion of this public hearing, and I'm going to call upon the appellant again, Christian Curry, for a response to public comments and as well as a summary statement.
Thank you. I can also answer any questions if you guys have any questions. But I thank everyone for that did speak on this. Obviously, there are some serious issues that are on Rita Lane, and even the developer admitted that there are issues on Rita Lane. I really just want to kind of point on a couple of things. Again, the alternative transportation. She does emphasize that there's alternative transportation to campus, that permit parking at ASU is expensive. I totally get that. And again, a lot of people are using alternative transportation to get to campus. What she failed to mention, though, was we all travel outside of Tempe for one reason or another to go do something, right? That is when the car comes into play. When you need to get outside of the little limits of downtown Tempe, you need a vehicle to do that. Councilwoman Amber, you hit on a solid point there regarding the six bedrooms. I mean, I understand that they went from 8 to 6, but if it is a parking issue, and developers can most definitely include more parking. The reason they don't is because it's costly to the developer to include additional parking on property. But there are examples out there of properties in which you can most definitely add additional parking if councils and DRCs tell them to add additional parking. It can always happen. It's just not costly for the developer to do. They want to maximize profit. At the end, though, I do want to emphasize again, you guys mentioned parking situations. It sounds like there's been, you guys understand the situation there. we're not dealing with hypotheticals. We've already dealt with situations you guys saw on the slides that I presented, that there are serious concerns that aren't hypotheticals that have happened already, and just inviting more vehicles onto the property will create larger situations. And again, I don't believe that the developer had an adequate response to how they plan on enforcing that in their lease agreement, or how they plan on doing that. The permit parking on the street, I believe it's one permit per house on that street. That's all they get. Tempe Micro Estates isn't even allowed to get permits for parking on the street. We have to confine all of our parking to our parking lot, or to that green zone that you guys saw out on the street, or all the way to Hyde Park at the end of Spence Avenue, which again is over a quarter of a mile away, where some residents have to park. And you don't want residents parking unless, in a park miles away, to have to walk home. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions as well as you guys, if you guys have any.
All right, sounds good, Mr. Curry. Anyone have any additional comments or questions for Mr. Curry? All right, no, okay. All right, well, hearing none, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right, I'm now going to bring up the applicant again, Genevieve Naudier, for her response to the public comments, as well as a summary statement.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure there's much more than I can add. I think this becomes a principled decision about where the priorities are going to lie, what the preferences are. Rita Lane is going to be going under more development. There is going to be further development. The zoning in that area means over the next couple of years, more of these higher density dwellings are going to be presented in front of you. And I think what we're essentially doing is almost spearheading this process and what's going to be happening in the future. And it almost needs to be a Rita Lane decision that is going to look at it as a microcosm of living in the city of Tempe. And that, I suppose, is what's going to drive everybody's decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to get here to any additional council comments or discussion on this item. I guess the one thing I was going to say on this, then I'm going to go to Councilmember Amberg right afterwards. I'm very much, and Mr. City Attorney, stop me if I'm in any way, shape, or form going where I should not be going here. I personally, when I look at this, I feel as if, clearly the units are important in this situation, and I do think that that's very properly decided from my perspective. The issue I have in this situation is about the parking concern that was raised when you're talking about, up to sort of 12 people. And I almost feel like there's a way to do the project, but also to include adequate parking to house the people who are going to be potentially living on site. That's just sort of my initial kind of gut when I'm looking at all of this and listening to everyone who's coming up to speak, from the residents to the applicant. And so that's just sort of my general perspective when I'm looking at this. I'm hoping that that was an okay statement, but that's just my initial thought when I'm looking at this. So, once again, I'm not allowed to make motions as the chair of the meeting, but that's just, I wanted to put that out there just for the record for my colleagues and for those here and those watching at home. Councilmember Amberg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know, Eric, if this is a question for you or if this is a question for Jeff and his team, but what we're being asked is not necessarily whether or not we like the development. We're being asked as a panel of jurists as to whether or not what DRC did falls in line with what current code is, correct?
Mayor, Council Member Amber, I think that's mostly correct. It falls in line, I think, is the criteria is the use permit. The DRC determined that they'd met the use criteria, so you're looking at whether the DRC made some kind of error in making that decision. So that's essentially your function here tonight is to review the DRC decision, not to start fresh from from scratch.
So, Mr. Mayor, then I think maybe this is a question for Jeff and his team. I've heard, you know, for this type of development, this type of building, the minimum standard is 3 parking spots. But whenever I'm looking at section 630, I don't have my glasses on, 308E, one of the approval criteria is whether or not this development would add any significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Is that part of the requirement for them to get this permit?
Sure, absolutely it is. I guess the question is, did the DRC take this criteria into consideration when evaluating the project? And my answer to that is yes. This is what they do on a regular basis. We include this in our report every time we present a case like this to them. It can only be my assumption that's what they're doing. Obviously, each one of their votes is an independent decision. But as I said, it's our assumption that they take this criteria into consideration.
Sounds good. Vice Mayor Garland?
I was going to ask something similar because in order to meet the criteria that we need to be voting on this, we need to say that the DRC did something that we didn't think was appropriate in their decision, but that's hard for us because we can't get into their head. So we have to look at the specific facts that are in front of us. Okay, my question was going to be similar. I don't know what else to say, but I did write down in my notes that microstates is actually part of the problem. If they have 13 units and they have more vehicles than that, then that's actually part of the problem too. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, if you like, I will say that the microstates, when they did process, they did establish a parking standard that allowed a reduction for parking. Normally, that project of that size would have been required to obtain or provide 26 parking spaces. They're only requiring 13.
Yeah, I remember being there for the ribbon cutting and for that property to get started, and that was the big thing that we were talking about. Was there's a couple of council members that were sitting next to me. Is like, this is going to be great because this is going to force people to not have vehicles and ride their bikes and do their scooters, and that obviously doesn't look like that's happened. That's just a consideration I'm thinking about regarding this other property. With the parking spots that they have, they want to encourage people to ride bikes and use other forms of transportation. As Councilmember Adams says, we've got great transportation in this city, but people have to get out and use it. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess just to cite, as Councilmember Amberg talked about as well, I think the issue that I really have is in section -308E is item number 1 here, which is any significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. And I think that's the one that I keep looking at when I'm thinking about the potential additional people. So I mean, I'm citing something that is specifically right here in the code, which is what gives me some level of pause in this situation. So, anyone else? Let me do this then. Just to kind of run down the list of options for council in this situation. So option number 1 is to approve the appeal of the DRC's decision, which is to find in favor of the appellant. And just to make sure that I'm being clear, that's Christian Curry, who was the first speaker this evening, which would effectively deny the 3 use permit standards and the use permit. The second option here is to deny the appeal of the DRC's decision and find in favor of the DRC and the original appellant, and effectively allow the 3 use permit standards and a use permit. Another option here is to, and I should say, because the council may choose to propose conditions, so I guess another option to option 1, I guess could be option 1A, which is to basically approve and make sure I'm saying this correctly, to approve the appeal of the DRC's decision, but also to add a condition to provide additional parking spaces to make sure that there's more on site, I guess I could probably say, if that's correct.
Mayor, the legal term we would attach as affirmed in part and modified in part. So
Okay.
yes, I think that is correct. So.
All right, sounds good. A couple of other options here. Option 3 is to continue to a future date certain, requesting additional information before making a final decision on the appeal. And the option number 4 is to remand or send back to the DRC for future consideration on the use permit issues. So those are the council's options that we can take up at this time. So anyone? Councilmember Amberg, you're looking at me, I'm like,
Mr. Mayor, I guess I'll go for it. The newest one, sacrificial lamb. My preference would be to refer it back to DRC. I personally don't think that, and I'm not on DRC, but I personally don't think that this project would satisfy the 6308E, any significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. So I move for option number 4.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Councilmember Amberg to remand this project back to the DRC for further consideration on the use permit issues. Mr. City Attorney?
Mayor, Councilman Amber, normally if you're going to send it back, you would want to give them specific instructions as to why you're sending them back and what you're asking the DRC to do. So I recommend that the motion be amended to clarify what, if you do want to send it back to the DRC, what exactly you want them to.
Okay. I will look to Councilmember Amberg to add some additional clarity to her motion.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, then I move that we remand it back to DRC specifically for them to look at that section to make sure that this project would satisfy that with maybe some additional information from, staff, transportation department or whatever, that would be able to provide a little bit more clarity as to how much foot traffic, how many vehicle traffic is actually going to be a result of this. And I don't know if I can, but a caveat being that there are 3 other single-family homes on Rita Lane that would possibly, potentially be able to do this as well. And that would just, to me, exacerbate the problems that are already happening on that street. Is that too much?
And just for what it, oh, no, and just for, I just want to make sure, and just for one additional piece of clarity, but to the point you were making too, was to look at item number 1, any significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic under the zoning development code section 6-308E. Would that be enough, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, Mayor, and I'm going to look out of the side of my eye at the Community Development Department, but normally what you look at when you look at a proposed development is the impact of that particular development, not necessarily what might come down in the future. It's really focused on the applicant, because the applicant can't control what others may seek to do with their property. They would have to, if they wanted to do the same thing, they'd have to go through the same process. So.
Okay. So I guess my follow-up question is, would Councilmember Amberg's motion be sufficient from your perspective in terms of clarity?
I think so, yeah, with that clarification that you're asking the DRC to look specifically at the traffic impact of this project and give that further consideration. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that motion's been made by Councilmember Amberg. Is there a second on that motion? Seconded by Vice Mayor Garland. So once again, the motion on the table is to remand back to the DRC for future consideration on the use permit issues. Are there any further comments or questions from council at this time? All right. Hearing none, please vote. Aye. Okay, and that motion passes 5-1 with Councilmember Chin voting no and Councilmember Keating absent. Okay. All right, so next up here, item 8A3, which is to approve the utilization of a 16-month National Association of State Procurement Officials cooperative contract with Knowledge Services for temporary staffing services. Council, any comments or discussion? It's been moved by Vice Mayor Garland, seconded by Councilmember Hodge. Please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The next item under the section is 8A4, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign Amendment 2 to an intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Public Transportation Authority for the purchase and supply of mobility transit services for fiscal year 2024-25.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Councilmember Adams.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hodge. Please vote.
Aye.
And that item also passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The next section under the next item under the section is 8A5, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign Amendment 3 to an intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Public Transportation Authority for the purchase and supply of transit services for fiscal year 2024-25.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Councilmember Adams. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hodge. Please vote.
Aye.
And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The next item under the section is 8A6, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Tempe and the Flood Control District of Maricopa County for the construction management and operation and maintenance of the Watson Drive and Bernardin Lane Storm Drain Project.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Vice Mayor Garland and seconded by Councilmember Adams. Please vote.
Aye.
And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The next item under the section is 8A7, which is to award a professional services contract to Consor North America Incorporated for project number 3221025A, Collection System Assessment. It's been moved by Councilmember Hodge. Do I have a second? Seconded by Vice Mayor Garland. Please vote.
Aye. My arrow is stuck.
Oh.
So, aye.
And Councilmember Amberg? And that item is, passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent.
Aye, Mayor.
Okay, all right. And next up, next item is 8A8, which is to award a construction contract to Felix Construction Company for project number 320-502 2A1, wellhead treatment, well 4 GMP1.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Councilmember Adams and seconded by Vice Mayor Garland. Please vote.
You fixed it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The last item under the section is 8A9, which is to award job order number 5 to Caliente Construction Incorporated for project number 6307621A, Lake Edge and Ramada Improvements, Sella Park, located north of Broadway Road between McClintock Drive and Country Club Way. It's been moved by Councilmember Hodge and seconded by Councilmember Chin. Is that correct? Oh, you know what? Let me read it again just to be safe then. So award 8A9, award job order number 5 to Caliente Construction Incorporated for project number 630-7621A, Lake Edge and Ramada Improvements, Sella Park, located south of Broadway Road between McClintock Drive and Country Club Way. So moved. Moved by Councilmember Hodge, seconded by Councilmember Chin. Thank you so much. Please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The next section on the non-consent agenda is ordinances and items for introduction and first hearing. The items under the section will be read and introduced tonight, but no substantive votes will be taken. The second hearings and votes are scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The first item under the section is 8B1, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for an amended planned area development overlay to modify development standards and a development plan review for a new 7-story mixed-use development consisting of 272 dwelling units and commercial uses on 1.95 acres for Apache Square, located at 1747 East Apache Boulevard. The applicant is Gamagen Burnham PLC, and I see Manjula Vaz in front of us. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. For your record, my name is Manjula Vaz, law firm of Gamagen Burnham. I'm actually going to make this fairly quick. As you may remember, earlier this year, we brought you this project at the old Pep Boys site at McClintock and Apache. At that time, and I'm not here, but Phil and Matt are here, but we talked a little bit about, it was a 5-story building, and we brought this to you before, right around the time we were doing the general plan update and kind of talking about trying to get more density. There's also some members of the community who wanted us to add more 3-bedroom units and a couple more units. So it's taken us a little while. We'd work on some parking issues. We'd worked with Phil and Matt, who are here, And I think it's resulted in a much better, cooler building, more interesting building. We have some more 3 bedrooms, more EVs, 63 bedroom units, 14 3 bedrooms, 94 1 bedroom, sorry. And what we've kept the amount of landscaping all around the site. But what I wanted to show you is this. You have a much more interesting building, kind of have a little bit of a rooftop deck. We've also been able to add some more articulation throughout the site. And as you may remember, on the south side of the site, we are able to, which I can show right here, we're actually able to wrap it. So we used to be able to see a little bit of the garage. Now everything is wrapped with units. And, we think it's more interesting of a building. And I'm happy to talk about it. I think you've heard about it a lot. So I thought I would just show you some pictures. But happy to answer any questions, but we are happy to try to add density to that corner and certainly match the general plan that the voters passed in March.
Sounds good. Who has, oh yeah, Councilor Burgess. I heard someone say I have a question. I couldn't hear.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you calling?
No, so I'll go Councilmember Chin, then Councilmember Adams.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Foz. Question, where retail square footage is?
The retail square footage, we're going to have, we have about 4,000 square feet. If you can see, 3915 square feet of street level flats along Apache. And then we actually have, if you remember, we have some outdoor dining restaurants kind of on the corner. And then we have 810 square feet of street level kind of live work along McClintock. So the whole goal was always to put the retail on Apache and then have live work on McClintock. That is a hard corner. Plus we have the bus stop. But the thing that we're going to do, and I know that for those of you like me who travel up and down McClintock all the time, as you may remember, the garage is on, but right now, I'll show you this, we've oriented, so the garage is on the south side of the site, so there won't be so many stopping with the bus stop. And so, yeah, the plan is retail along Apache, live work on McClintock.
Thank you. My comment, and if you choose to address the comment, is I'm tired of empty spaces on the bottom of developments where we've been promised retail and restaurants. So I am eager to hear more. Perhaps you'll have more details in the second hearing, but I'm fine with hearing that you're prioritizing, that's the plan.
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Chen, you and I chatted about it. I mean, our intent was actually to, we spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we get some retail. We're trying to go find some retail. I mean, I think what we're going to have to do is probably, and we've talked about it, subsidize a little bit, and we're going to work on the live work. And I think you and I have talked a little bit about maybe get some art in there and see how it works. But that's how we're going to have to start the plan of getting stuff on Apache.
Great.
But yes, we can certainly talk more about it if you'd like.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I think this is a great project. It really looks nice. It's going to stand out on that corner. It's going to be a most improved corner in the city, and or one of the most, I should say. And I just like it. And of course, the more trees, the better. We're really trying to increase our tree canopy. The palm trees aren't doing great right now in the valley because it's gotten so hot. So I just would maybe caution on using, maybe some different trees besides the palms. Look great. I love palm trees, but they're just dying with this heat.
Yeah.
So it's just something to consider. But I love the project. I think it looks very classy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Adams, just to address that, we had some feedback on the palms. We've actually put street trees for shade. The palms give a little bit of a look just for the appearance versus the shade, but I take your point.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Amberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's kind of the first I've seen this one because I'm brand new. But where is the closest light rail stop to this?
Right in front of it, because there's light rail right here
there?
at Apache and McClintock.
Okay. And I will say to Councilmember Adams' point, if you go to AMWA, the Arizona Water Municipal Users Association website, you can find a great list of drought-resistant trees.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Anger. We actually had worked with the planning department, so the I didn't show you the full landscape plan, which I can show you next time. I know you have a long meeting ahead of you, but they are all within the drought-resistant trees plan.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing. I've actually got one card here in front of me right now, and that's Matthew Salinger. Please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm Matthew Salinger of Tempe, Arizona. I'm representing CVAC, once again, Citizens for a Vibrant Apache Corridor. We have reviewed this project a few months ago, and we really like this project a lot. It's obviously going to be one of the most excitingly changed corners that we have. We think it's an appropriate scale. I actually live in Hudson Manor, just behind the Hudson and Haji Baba and everything. So this is pretty close to me, and I think it's a really wonderful development. I'm really excited about having this there. The thing about the trees dying, in a lot of cases, there isn't enough soil for the trees, and so we've been talking about that. And Tempe's got a study going on to tell people how much volume they need for each of the trees. So that will help out a lot. And then for me, anyway, it's my opinion on the retail, it's a real bummer that there are a lot of missing retail throughout Apache. That is a factor of having students move into all of these buildings, not raising our tax base along in this area for a catchment. That's why we can't get a grocery store without some help from the city. So one of the things that we need to do is start realizing that we need to restrain somehow, and I don't know how to do it, but restrain the students from moving into all of these great apartment complexes that are meant for professionals. We need those professionals in here, and then the retail will be there. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on item 8B1 during the public testimony portion? All right, seeing none, I will close that portion of the hearing. Council, any further comments or discussion? Yes, Vice Mayor Garland?
I just want to say how much I really appreciate the neighborhood associations and the neighbors who come in and give us comment on a project that's in their community. And I know how hard this community, this Apache Corridor area, their neighborhood association really does spend so much time looking through the information that comes to them about something that's going to be developed in their city, and they really take the time to look through it and talk to the developers and really see how this is going to fit in their community. And I love when they come in and do that. So I just want to say thank you so much for our community involvement.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Any further comments or questions? Oh, yeah, Councilmember Hodge. My apologies.
Okay, thank you. I was going to echo what Vice Mayor said, that the community, and they not only do they reach out in the council meeting, they reach out to us directly. So we always know where they stand. And also I want to thank Manjula for doing all the, the improvements and you work very well within the community to hear what they have to say and try to input everything that has been said to the community, bring it back together. So thank you so much for that. And I'm very close to that area, so it is very near and dear to my heart because I'm only less than a mile away from where this project will be put in. So this is part of my neighborhood also.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Councilmember Adams?
I agree with everything Burdetta Hodge just said. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other further comments or questions on this item? All right, seeing none, just want to reiterate the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The next item under the section is 8B2, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a zoning map amendment from CSS TOD to MU4 TOD and a planned area development overlay to establish development standards for a new 20-story mixed-use development consisting of 950 dwelling units and commercial uses on 3.61 acres for Nova Tempe, located at 835 South Rural Road. The applicant is Snell and Wilmer, LLP, and I see Nick Wood. Good evening.
Mayor, members of the council, Nick Wood, Snell and Wilmer, 1 East Washington Street, and I represent Up Campus. We've changed the name of the application. Originally it was going to be Nova Tempe, but out of respect for ASU, which is Novus right across the street, we're going to call it the Leo. I don't know anyone named Leo, but I think it's a cool name. So I think this will be the most improved corner. It's the southeast corner of the intersection of University and Rural. Of course, it's a gas station is there, and it's an older retail development. Our client actually has assembled these with multiple sellers. As you can see, we're kind of bookend. On one side, we have an 18-story project that you approved just this past year. To the south of us, across 8th, of course, is the 24-story project. And in our original discussions, the client had anticipated building something taller and more intense. And after discussions with some of you and with staff, the client said, no, let's do what's best for the community. So we decided to do it at 20 stories, which is basically between the 24 to the south and the 18 to the east. As you can see across the street, there's a lot of retail. Cane's is there. We have Trader Joe's and a whole host of others. And as a result, there's been a lot of jaywalking across the street. We're going to cure that, actually, as I'll show you. And of course, we have Innovation Corridor that's catty corner from us with ASU across the street. Light rail station is right across the street. And of course, we have ASU next to us to the southeast. This is the area of the site. You're all very, very familiar with it, of course. And again, it's a number of different owners. We're not changing the zoning. The general plan calls for 65 dwelling units or greater. The site currently is CSS. We're changing it to MU4 PAD. And again, tonight we're just bringing the zoning. We'll be bringing the development plan review forward. We're going to file it right after the first of the year, so we'll be back with the development plan review. But we're so far along that I wanted to show you pretty much what we're doing. So here's the site plan. We have 2 towers that are 20 stories. The active space on top is really on top of the towers where we have the pools. We have space at ground level, at grade level, which is more passive space. What's interesting about this project is you can see we have a lot of open space. Many of the projects we bring you, we have lot coverage that's 90 to 95 to 100%. The lot coverage here is only 56%. We have a 10-story parking garage. On top of that garage, we have some more kind of quasi-active space. We have a running track, some pickleball courts, and we're also going to put solar. About 20% of the roof of the parking garage will be solar panels. We were asked to do a number of things, and even though I'm old, I learn each time I have another project. So things that have been stressed in the past. One of them is pick up and drop off for Uber. We've had projects before where that doesn't happen, and more often that's how especially young people are traveling. So we actually have 3 areas, surface areas for pick up and drop off. One is on the south side. You can see where it says number 9, just on the south side of the residential tower 2. That's pick up and drop off for Uber. Then as you go along the internal circulation area, between the 2 buildings, just on the right, there's kind of a pull in and pull out. That can be pick up and drop off there. As we continue to the north, we have another number 9. That's another pick up and drop off. And then the roadway actually passes through the parking garage. So there's areas in there, again, if it's raining or if it's really hot, they can have pick up and drop off. And of course, the garage is connected to both towers. Another thing that we did, working very closely with your Streets and Transportation Department, is not only internal circulation, but more importantly, traffic, especially out on the University. We know, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of jaywalking. So we have a curb cut on the far eastern side, on the northeast corner, and that curb cut will serve to do several things. Number one, it'll help move traffic across, right? Because we are directly across the curb cut across the street, but we're going to actually install a signal. So we're going to pay for all 4 corners, and we're going to put a traffic signal there. So number one, we have traffic lights, so when the pedestrians are passing, they're not jaywalking, they're actually going with or without the light, although there are some knuckleheads who don't wait for it to turn green or the walk sign. But at least they'll have a light to do it. And then, of course, for cars entering and exiting our site, they can do it again with a light. And then, of course, we have the curb cut right along rural as well. The other thing that you see is the extensive landscaping. And it's a lot. I'll show you some renderings of that. We actually have 40 feet from wall to back of curb along University and 10-foot sidewalks, and we have significant landscaping and depth on the other side as well. And we have a lot of retail, a little less than 15,000 square feet. And we have covered outdoor dining, and I'll show you that in a moment also. So here's, you can see where the breakup is for, we anticipate to be restaurants, 4 different locations. 3 of our current retail restaurants want to be in these buildings. One of them is the pizza place. I know some of you love the pizza place. So they want to be in here. We have hired, one of the questions that Councilmember Chin asked is, we have a national, actually, retail expert brokerage firm, and they're already beginning to help us identify users for these. Another thing is bikes, right? Even though we have light rail across the street, even though we're catty corner from the campus and across the street from the campus, we want these kids to use bikes. So we have locker areas in each building and at the garage. You can see in the orange, that's all lockers for bicycles. And then, go to the next one. Oh, going back. So one of the things, Vice Mayor, you brought to our attention was the incredible find along the railroad right-of-way. I actually watched a 7.5-minute video where you were one of the members and Mr. Anton was as well, talking about that having been a community location and a floor to that building that goes back over 800 years. So one of the things we've done with staff is work out to show, again, the sensitivity to that, because we may find it on our site. So we have 2 stipulations as part of the zoning that have to do with the archaeological sensitive area, and basically having a plan, right? Working with Tempe's Historic Properties Treatment Plan and putting that together, and then hiring experts that actually take the course, the online cultural sensitivity training and test. So that'll be part of those stipulations if you choose to approve it when we come back. Site area, it's pretty big. It's 3.69 acres, 950 dwelling units. You see we have a lot of studios. We have 319 studios, 41 bedrooms, 132 2-bedrooms. And of course we have 3s and 4s. In each case with the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, they're all bedrooms with lock-offs like all the student housing projects that we do. Lot coverage, as I mentioned, is 56%. We're parking it at about 0.35 ratio, which is within the realm that we've done in the past. And as I mentioned, we have commercial space that's almost 15,000. I love what the architect did. Our architect is here if you have any questions for him tonight. But as you can see, we have different colors, we have depth, we have articulation, we have movement. And you can see what they've done in that pedestrian realm at the grade level. 2 levels of glass, columns, landscaping. It's really neat. And then you can see it both along this shot, which is along University, and then the one on Rural. Here's a shot on Rural. Again, different buildings, but because one is angled, we actually have levels that break up that facade. And again, changing the colors, I just love this. So this is the pedestrian area along University. As you can see, we not only have a detached sidewalk with trees, and by the way, Councilmember Chin, you asked me about the tree size. They're not going to be the little ones. They'll be 36-inch box trees, and which are pretty good. Oh, I'm sorry. That's all right. It's been a long week. It's been a long. So yeah, there'll be 36-inch box trees, but we'll come with a landscape plan with everything on it. But they'll be healthy, good-sized trees. As you can see, we have the trees, we have 10-foot sidewalk, then we have a large landscape island, again for pedestrians, and then another sidewalk on the other side of that. All of the outdoor dining for all of the retail is outdoors and is covered. You can see even the roof area above the outdoor dining has metal-looking or wood-looking kind of metal. They're going to have the landscape hanging from the balcony. My wife and I live in Optima Camelview in downtown Scottsdale. And having this landscaping hang off is really cool. So as you can see, again, top architecture and design, and really a great place for people to be. Secondly, this would be the area along Rural. Separation between the buildings. Again, more of the retail, the outdoor dining, the landscaping, great architecture and design. This is the corner. We're going to build a bus stop that's right there. And then we have a lot of area next to it for the multimodal portion, where we can have scooters, we can have bicycles, again, for the public to use. That really impressive corner, kind of a, a sense of arrival when you jump, step off the bus. And again, it certainly helps with our retail as well. This is a shot of the retail in the streetscape along Rural. And again, you can see the architecture and the restaurant area and the retail area, et cetera. We are, of course, doing the green construction code elements, site sustainability, water use efficiency, energy efficiency, indoor environmental quality, material sources, and the Fitwell certification. Solar panels I mentioned on 20% of the rooftop. Car sharing, we're going to have Zip cars on site as well, either 2 to 4 of those. We're going to put 50, that's 50, charging stations within our parking structure, which is, I've never seen a developer create that many, but that's the world we live in. And then, of course, LED lighting, and that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wood. Really appreciate it. Let me start with Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you. I think the 20 stories was a great compromise, so I appreciate that, because I know there were some problems with the 30 stories, I believe. So that's great. It's right in between the 24 and the 20, so or 18. So thank you for that. You're right about the greatly improved corner, and this is neck and neck with the other project. I think this one actually is even more beautiful, so I like it. Do you have room for dogs at the area?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Adams, we had due on our passive space down at grade level.
Okay.
We will make space for dogs in that.
All right, great. Thank you. Oh, it's right in here, in the middle there. Okay, great. Thank you for considering our dogs. I love it that you have solar panels. It's one of the few projects that we've ever had in the city that's brought up solar panels as part of the bid. So that's excellent. And 50 charging stations, I think that's the highest I've heard. So that's moving in the right direction. And it's going to be a lot safer. That gas station's right on the corner, and pulling in and out of that really heavily used, one of the most heavily used intersections in our city. That is going to really improve safety. So I'm happy that that's all being combined and closed out. We'd never approve a gas station on that corner today. There's no way. It's way too dangerous. So good job on that. I like it that you're going to bring more restaurants to the city, because we need more restaurants. That's something near and dear to my heart, and I love it. You're going to have 4 restaurants in there, right? You said?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Let's see. Also, that you have a bus stop and transportation options there. I serve on a vice chair of Valley Metro Rail, so I'm always looking for different transportation options. So good job on that. And thank you for our green code implications, or not implications, but putting them together as part of the build. So I appreciate that too. And I think you're one of the first developers to also incorporate our green code initiative, because it's not mandatory, but you did it anyway. So you did the right thing. So thank you, Nick, for the presentation. I will be supporting your project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I realize I go to all the council comments, let me take the public testimony portion here, then I'll bring Mr. Wood back up for any comments or questions council has. So let me just go ahead and officially then open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on item 8B2 this evening? If so, please get my attention. All right, seeing none, I will close it. That's kind of what I thought was going to happen. So I wanted to make sure to do that first, and then let me go here to Vice Mayor Garland, and then Councilmember Chin, were you next? Okay, so I'll go down the row. Vice Mayor Garland, Councilmember Chin, Councilmember Amberg.
So there's so many times in the last year and a half that I've been asking when developers come up and talk to us about projects, you know, what are you going to be doing with the green code? And so I love the fact that I don't have to ask that anymore, that you actually put it in there. And when I met with you, I was so excited. So I'm like, I didn't even have to ask, and you've already put the green codes in there. So thank you. And I love all the aspects of the sustainability that you do have. Again, it's very nice to be able to see that. It's nice to hear about the having not only the EV charging stations, but the solar panels. That, I mean, that is very smart. It's what we want, and it's nice to have somebody come in and say they're going to do it, and we don't have to beg for it. It's the right thing to do, and you're doing the right thing. So I was very happy about that. I love when we talked about this, and I'm looking at your plans, the trees that are going to be all around there, because this is a walking area, and so being able to have those trees in the larger box, or as big a box as we can get, I'd like them bigger than 32, but being able to get good big trees in there is really helpful. I will say that on the way to City Hall yesterday, somebody jaywalked right where you guys are going to be putting that signal right in front of me. So it's happening now, and it is happening. So thank you so much for the consideration of putting that in there, because I think that's going to make the area safer. It's really going to save lives. I love the look of this on the street level. I teased you when I was looking at these pictures before. You'd have people in the corner of your picture like taking pictures of the building, which just made me laugh. But it does look nice, the columns going in, so they're not sticking out into the walkways. I do like the look of that. And I will say thank you for mentioning about it being an archaeologically sensitive area. It is incredible, and I was mentioning this to you, and I've told other people about this. The mound that you see in that parking lot is the remains of one of the largest native structures that rivals the Casa Grande ruins in the size. I stood in the middle of one of the posts, and it was huge. But the remainder of the building after it had fallen had been moved over for a railroad. And so that pile, I think there's going to be an amazing things that they're going to be able to find, and then look at repatriating it back to the tribal communities around here. So I'm actually looking forward to what you're going to be doing over there, just because I want to know the history. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Next up, Councilmember Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Wood. A few things. That curb cut and the light is important for that area. It will save lives. It will prevent accidents. So I think that's important, and it will help the development also. You and I chatted about the retail development and why that's important. I don't think I'm alone in being tired of empty spaces in these developments. It's a waste of space. And in that critical corner, where you're removing a couple of restaurants, one with personal historical significance for me, I think it's a well-trafficked corner, and I appreciate that you are working with a retail development company to do that. That tells me you're taking that part seriously. I know the priority is this is a housing development for you, but you mentioned to us, and it's important to our community, that the retail development is critical as well. I appreciate you also working with our staff and the interests of the neighbors in the area to adjust that original plan. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Amberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for the 4 restaurants that you're going to have there, where are the people going to park? Are they going to be in the parking garage? Is there enough parking for that?
Yeah, we actually have the first level of the parking garage is open. Okay. So as you can see, we have 88 spaces that are for commercial as well as for visitors for the students.
Okay. And my second question, where you're going to do the curb cut, I mean, I don't know if I was spacing, but it's on the eastern, on University, on the eastern portion?
Yeah, so we have the dark black area is the one curb cut.
I think that's fantastic, because I don't think people realize across the street from that is Cane's. And while I don't understand it. I've got 4 kids that understand it a lot.
Can I second that comment?
My checking account understands it as well. But I know you're going to have a lot of students that are going to be going from, so that is a fantastic place to put that light.
Yeah. And so that'll be signalized, so it'll be really good.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Hodge.
All right, thank you. I spent, and we talked a lot about it. I really do love this project. I love the area. I love the, now the height matches. I think the corridor of it, how it's built, it just fits right into that area. My favorite part is that Gus's Pizza, which I spent many a nights to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning doing homework and eating pizza at. It's very, it's a landmark there. I mean, a lot of people have sat and did their homework there. So thank you for including that in. And also, I just want to put out there that I do not want Councilmember Chin to be able to play pickleball there because she thinks she's the pickleball queen of Tempe, but we are trying to get to a point that we can beat her. So thank you for that.
All right. So just 3 quick things for me. One, very much appreciate the presentation and appreciate the application of the Green Code as Vice Mayor Garland talked about. I know she's strongly talked about that during a lot of the projects that have come before us. And given the fact that it's not a mandatory Green Code, but a voluntary Green Code, still the willingness by you and your client to add a lot of those elements into the project without even asking, and talking about the 50 charging stations, I also think is critically important. So I really appreciate all of those. Also wanted to say too, on the restaurant front too, what I also love about that portion is that it makes it so that the development is not just simply for the students who will live at the development, but it's also providing amenities for the people who live in Tempe in that area, which I think is also very critical. It's one thing to have a certain person living there, but I think that all of these developments should try to incorporate elements so that people of all different generations and backgrounds can really enjoy it, and that it's adding value to the city as a whole. So I really appreciate that as well. Something's in my throat. And the last thing I was going to say is also about the traffic. So I mean, as a person who lives in downtown Tempe, and I go to that Trader Joe's on a consistent basis, and to really, excuse me again, to second what Councilmember Amberg talked about, the fact of the matter is that Raising Cane's, for whatever reason, and we've talked about this many times, if you go over there, there literally for a long time used to be traffic backed out onto University Drive, which really was, frankly, a traffic hazard and a safety hazard for everyone pretty much driving through that area, especially during rush hour. And I know that our transportation staff has really spent a lot of time trying to proactively address that because they also knew that it was a serious issue. And I think they've done a fantastic job at mitigating some of the impacts of that, especially during rush hour. But I was going to say the fact that you're talking about adding that curb cut, as Councilmember Chin talked about, and that you're going to be paying for a 4-way stoplight there. I know many times that a developer would only have to pay for a portion of that stoplight, but the fact that your client is frankly paying for all of it, which will greatly improve the traffic flow and of course therefore improve traffic safety and greatly help to mitigate any potential challenges as a result of this development being built, is also really critically important. As we know that University and rural intersection is one of the most heavily trafficked intersections in the entire city of Tempe, especially during peak times. So whenever I hear someone coming in wanting to add a whole lot of additional units and bring more people to that corner, I think it's absolutely necessary that they're paying to make sure that there is ample traffic mitigation in that area to make sure that people can go to work or go home and do that safely each and every day. So I really appreciate the fact that your client's stepping up and frankly taking on the cost of that, because once again, that safety will not just be simply for the people who are living at this building, but it will frankly be for everyone who travels through our city, regardless of what time of day or what day of the week. So just wanted to say all of those things. So thank you.
And by the way, my client, Mr. Buss, is here. He came from Chicago where it's snowing today. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what's snow anyway? All right, so just want to reiterate once again, this is only the first hearing here. The second and final hearing on this, second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. So let's see here. The next item under this section is 8B3, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a zoning map amendment from CSS to PCC1 and a planned area development overlay to establish development standards for Tesla, located at 2077 East University Drive. The applicant is Andrew Rugg. So I want to say too, I think the applicant is actually here virtually. So I should say as a note, you should be elevated, Andrew, to being a presenter in Teams. So once you're you're elevated as a presenter, please feel free to unmute your microphone. And so Jason Wolf over here with Tempe 11 is going to bring up your presentation so you can direct him as to when to change the slides. So, Mr. Rue, can you hear me?
I can. Can you guys hear me okay?
Wonderful. That worked exactly how I planned it. So, so
Perfect.
please feel free to go ahead.
Sure thing. Well, hey, I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Andrew Rueg with Master Plan, use consulting firm out of Dallas, Texas. I'm here tonight representing Tesla for a zoning change for vehicle sales at their existing service station location. If we could go to the next slide. I don't know if I have the control. Okay, you have the control of that. Thank you. So what happened here initially is Tesla would like to do vehicle sales at this existing service only location. And we asked staff, you know, what do we need to do to make this kind of thing happen? And it seemed, you know, to me to be kind of a convoluted zoning matter where it's a really simple request where we're just simply asking for vehicle sales to be allowed here. And through the zoning change process, we had to do, you know, 3 different type of amendments: a zoning map amendment, planned area development, and a use permit for vehicle sales to accomplish that. If you go to the next slide for me. Here's a quick aerial of the site. So again, this is existing Tesla Service Center off University and River Drive. If you go to the next slide, please. Existing zoning, we have the CSS district, as you can see on this zoning map. You know, there's several CSS districts that are located along University Avenue, or sorry, University Drive, kind of a you know, commercial corridor with some residential behind it. If you go to the next slide for me. And the way to accommodate this request again was to rezone it to a planned community commercial district. You'll also note that there's another PCC1 a little bit further to the west of our particular site. If you go to the next slide for me. And, you know, again, we're not changing anything exterior on the site. So the existing Tesla Service Center building is remaining the same. Parking layout is remaining the same. The only change is highlighted here in yellow, which is the vehicle sales component. And if we go to the next slide, we'll just have a little bit of a zoomed in version to that. And for the vehicle sales component of this, what that would entail is customers can come into the showroom, work with a sales representative to get more information about different Tesla models. We'll have a very small availability of cars that they can test drive, but the main purpose is really to bring in customers and, you know, that you would do at a typical car dealership, talk to them about the cars, the features, and have that ability to have the vehicle sales component out of this primary, you know, service center that's been existing for about 8 years or so now. So that's really the whole zoning case that we've requested here today. And I also have Hamed Akavin and Nora Severns with Tesla on as well, if there are any questions or comments from you all. And I appreciate you taking the time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Let me move forward actually with the public testimony portion of the public hearing first and see if there's anyone in the audience wishing to address the City Council on item 8B3 this evening. If so, please get my attention. All right, seeing none, I will close the public testimony portion. Council, any comments or discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Rueg. Appreciate that. And just want to note once again that the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The next item under the section is 8B4, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a code text amendment within the Tempe Zoning and Development Code, amending Section 3-401, accessory buildings, uses, and structures, allowing detached shade canopies with a use permit in residential front yards, and amending related definitions. The applicant is the City of Tempe. Is there any presentation, Ryan, or are you comfortable?
We're ready to present unless council.
Does council need a presentation on item 8B4? Would you like one?
No.
Okay, just you want to have one?
I mean, I think for transparency, we should do at least
Okay, so Vice Mayor Garland's asking for just a short presentation for transparency purposes, so if you'd like to come up.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The request before you tonight is a code text amendment for accessory building structures to allow engineered shade. Part of this request is attached to the Sustainable Growth Development Initiative and looking at performance regarding tree and shade canopies. And we look at that opportunity to provide shade in our residential single-family areas. What this will actually promote is the ability to provide shade coverings in single-family neighborhoods, existing driveways. Today, the code restricts structures in the first 20 feet of the front yard setback, and also excludes having separate adjacent accessory structures that might not be attached to the main residence. There have been citations noted of residents that did not know the code requirements and have built these structures that provide shade in the driveways. And we see that there's an opportunity to help come into compliance with some of these shade structures when folks are converting their garages into livable space, and then accommodate that shade along the driveway. This process will basically allow a process where there's a use permit requirement, the ability to have the shade structure with up to within 5 feet of the front yard property line or in the 5 feet into the side yard, and give the residents an opportunity to hear the request and process the requirement through a public hearing process. So if there's any concerns, questions on the compatibility of the request, then the applicant will likely receive a favorable support for the request through the standard hearing process, which is with the Development Review Commission. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you have at this time.
Sorry about that, Ryan. A little conversation. Anyone have any comments or Vice Mayor Garland?
I just want to say thank you. I just think that I think it's important for us to be able to show these things, even if we do it quickly, but let our residents be able to see what we're talking about when we're working on this. So that's why I wanted it. So thank you.
Certainly.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. All right, so let's see here. This also is a public hearing item. So if there's any public testimony on item 8B4, please feel free to get my attention. Anyone? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Anyone have any further comments or discussion? All right, hearing none, the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The next item under the section is 8B5, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a code text amendment within the Tempe Zoning and Development Code, adding section 6-315 related to adaptive reuse of commercial, office, and mixed-use buildings for multifamily development. The amendment intends to comply with mandates and provisions of Arizona House Bill 2297. Ryan, good evening.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Another text amendment. So this is a code text amendment in response to the state legislature, House Bill 2297 as stated, a mandate for cities for populations over 150,000 to require basically an opportunity for expanding the multifamily housing supply, addresses some issues with the housing stock in our commercial office and mixed use buildings area. The requirement will allow use of multifamily within not more than 10% of existing commercial and office mixed-use spaces without requiring a public hearing process. So in most cases, you might see a rezoning or a development plan or a PD come forward that has to go through neighborhood meetings, a hearing process. This process streamlines that process to be administrative and then gives the applicant rights to those multifamily developments based on multifamily density within a 1 mile radius of the site. Municipalities also may, through this process, designate up to 10% of such buildings to be excluded from the provisions of the process, basically excluding some of these commercial areas. And I've got some slides that'll show this option. And then every 10 years, the municipality may modify some of these numbers, the percentages allowed for this multifamily adaptive reuse, or the percentages related to areas that we might want to exclude certain commercial sites. Some of just the basic criteria with the development standards that's required for the adaptive reuse requires a site plan and approval process, including utility providers, our site plan review process, like with any cases through a development plan review. So those cases can either be done administratively if it's existing buildings or through the standard DPR process that our commission hears. There's a compliance to make sure they have adequate sewer and water services, compliance with building fire codes, and that the buildings, and this is part of the evaluation process to be eligible for the adaptive reuse, is that the sites have been determined either economically or functionally obsolete. And that usually has to do with the amount of vacancy on the site, more than 50%, and then the disrepair of the commercial that's on the property. There is a minimum requirement of being at least 1 acre and not more than 20 acres in area. And then in addition to that, the state also allows us to set aside a minimum of 10% of the dwelling units to be required for low and moderate income households. So this is something that is placed as basically a requirement of the developer to agree to a term with having at least 10% of those units be for affordable housing. The parking requirements should not exceed those for multifamily or mixed-use development, so they are required to provide the same standards as that of other multifamily districts. The municipality can't withhold a development permit through the process, which we typically don't anyways. But basically the density for the site will be based on maximum density and height allowance that is allowed for multifamily development within a 1 mile radius. So there's an evaluation process of the location to find out what eligible density or height allowances might be allowed for that site. We also have provisions in there regarding maximum height allowance, maximum density. It's either based on the lesser of the heights within the 1 mile radius or no more than 5 stories. So you won't see this process produce or build any other projects any greater than 5 stories. And then within the provisions of the state law, it allows the municipality as it may limit maximum heights to 2 stories within 100 feet of a single family zone. So we have added that provision as part of this text amendment. There was feedback from the community and neighborhoods that wanted to see some of those protections when redevelopment might occur next to a single family. So for existing buildings, you have a situation might be it's non-conforming to the typical multifamily development standards. That would be considered non-conforming, but allowed to basically adaptively reuse that building to include additional residential units. The units will have to conform to the maximum allowable density of the site, but can utilize that additional height that might be on that existing building as a conversion, if you will, say from office to residential. But any expansions of those buildings have to conform to the maximum allowable density. There are exemptions within the House bill. It does exempt historical districts of significance, landmarks, airport vicinity within the 60 DNL that's described within state law, and then lands located on tribal lands. These are all example areas of the state exempted locations. We also have a map that we're showing an opportunity to identify other exempted areas. So this is just a quick diagram analysis for what we took and evaluated. Okay, the total locations of office and commercial mixed-use buildings that might be eligible for this process, and then took and applied and removed the exemption areas that the House Bill state exclusions have, and those are those light pink areas showing the 60 DNL contour lines and some historic property sites locations that would be excluded from that. And then we took those provisions and then looked at and identified areas where where the state allows us an option to exclude additional areas. We first took a evaluation process based on the general plan, sites that were not designated mixed use but were designated primarily commercial as areas or prime locations, but you might want to still retain our commercial aspects. And then looking at the density and the locations, we had to get to a number of no more than 252 buildings, which is our goal of less than 10% to maintain those exemptions. And we got down to these sites here that are shown in the hatched areas where we excluded the opportunity to and include multifamily as part of an adaptive reuse program. That's not to say that these locations or areas are not potentially suitable for including a residential, but if someone wanted to, they would have to go through a standard hearing process and a standard zoning case to request residential for those locations. We had an outreach adoption process. It was very brief, although because it was mandated by the state, we did have outreach input in our August, September with the initial draft, public meetings. We had a presentation with the Neighborhood Advisory Commission, and then 2 public meetings, both virtual and in person at the Don Casano room. In late October, there was a draft code released, and we are currently wrapping up our hearing processes. We had gone to the DRC for recommendation, received unanimous support for this request, and here before you tonight at the first hearing. Thank you for the team that has been involved in this project, and be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Councilmember Adams.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Ryan, for the presentation. And I appreciate that you, even though it's a state mandate, that you still had public input. And that's so important. And I just really appreciate it. Looking forward to making some of these changes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Adams.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Anyone else? Any further comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, just want to reiterate that the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. Let's see here.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I think we missed the public testimony. I'm not sure there's
Oh,
anybody
we
here.
did, which, ooh, my bad. Let's go back. Is there any public testimony on this item? If so, please get my attention. Definitely not. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. All right, seeing, exactly, seeing none. Okay, then I will once again reiterate, now that we're officially closing the item, the second and final public hearing will be on December 19th, 2024. Thank you, sir. All right, that takes me to item 8B6, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a code text amendment within the Tempe Zoning and Development Code, amending Part 6, Chapter 2 of the Zoning and Development Code related to zoning map amendments, applications, and deadlines as mandated from Arizona Senate Bill 1162. The applicant is the City of Tempe. Ryan. Oh. Hey, man. Wow. When'd you get here?
Thank you, legislatures, for my third round of this process. We're now introducing the mandate requirements for Senate Bill 1162. So this is a state mandated requirement for municipalities. Basically has to do with the zoning process for timelines. And a lot of the focus from the state legislature was focused on the timing for residential zoning, be able to get that zoning application process done in a timely manner. The requirement for the Senate bill requires initial completeness review process of no more than 30 days, and then a follow-up review process with that application of no more than 15 days. And then once the application is deemed complete, municipalities or cities in this instance have to schedule or have a decision on the request within no more than 180 days from the date of the initial acceptance of the application. So that means getting it to that public hearing process, which usually has a neighborhood meeting and 3 public hearings prior to that 180-day process for either you all to approve it or to deny it, to make a decision on the request. So it changes up a little bit of our process procedures. We do have a somewhat complex process with Tempe where we require many elements of a zoning process, a zoning map amendment. Then you've got PADs, development plan review. Luckily with the state, they've exempted the PAD process from being required to do 180 days, but it makes us rethink some of our process and procedures that we have to have a little bit more flexibility in how these applications get processed. So one important element to note is it's not required for a land designated as a historic district or applications for historic designation, and it's not applicable to planned area developments. But basically what we're doing is giving a little bit more flexibility for the applicants In the application process, they can provide an exemption that allow them to delay or postpone the time periods provided, and then we can do our standard review procedure of processing a DPR, a zoning case, and a PAD, or otherwise, we'll have to break up that component of that process and bring forward to you all in the public body a zoning decision, and then have the applicant follow up with that design review process, because sometimes that's some of the intricate details of the project plan review that might take a little more time. So this process will be clarified through our application and components requirements for review procedures. To note, we are now actually studying and evaluating our timelines for zoning cases. We actually just had to do it this first year as another state mandate. And currently, our zoning process is averaging 189 days. So although the state does mandate no more than 180 days, we are in a pretty good standing to potentially meet that goal already. So we think a lot of the projects will still come forward in its normal fashion, but there might be some cases where timing-wise, you might just see the zoning case and then the design review follow up at a later time. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the presentation. Councilmember Adams?
Ryan, with all of these changes of the state law, are we going to be okay as far as staff for covering all of these different things? Because I mean, it's a lot that's been thrown at us, and I'm just concerned about the employees and their ability to keep up with all of this.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, we've been very good. We've got a very healthy, robust staff. We have no vacancies at this time, and I think we have adequate staffing levels to address these.
Okay.
If there was ever concern about the potential for additional requirements or new obligations there, we certainly work with our government relations staff and kind of bring some of those areas of concerns up so that we can kind of help try to mitigate at the front level and working with our legislature to make sure that it doesn't become an encumbrance to the process. But we're in a good position at this time.
Okay, thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other council members? Any additional comments or questions? All right. Once again, just want to, actually, this is a public hearing as well, I imagine, right? Yes. All right. So is there anyone here in the audience wishing to address the council during the public testimony portion of this public hearing? All right, seeing none, I will close that and reiterate that the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. Next item under the section is 8B7, which I'd like to refer to as the item that we've all been waiting for during this long evening, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a code text amendment within the Tempe Zoning and Development Code, amending Part 3 Special Use Standards and Part 7 Definitions of the Zoning and Development Code related to the keeping and definition of domestic chickens, and providing it for a definition of hoop house. The applicant is the city of Tempe, and very specifically Ryan LeVake. Ryan, are you here to answer any questions or give a presentation on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. We don't have a presentation, but just very simply state it's a minor modification based on the state law changes. Today, city of Tempe allows 5 chickens by right, and then you can get a use permit to have more, up to 10. This process now allows it by right to be up to 6. So it's a small change. We had to modify some of the definitions because we have to look at small animals in a different category as domestic chickens, and then allow other options for other small animals. But our community, Tempe, is very small animal friendly, and we embrace having additional chickens. Related to hoop houses, it's just a definition in the code to clarify that hoop houses, which are just for gardening purposes only, still have to meet the requirements of setbacks for accessory structures.
Okay. Councilor Adams?
So I have another question. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So what if somebody has a lot of chickens and then also a lot of geese or ducks or whatever? I mean, does that all add up to 6, or is it separate since it's different species of birds?
Good question, yeah. So the provision, because now it's in the state law, we have to allow by right up to 6 chicken. We do count geese or other different types of animals separately.
Okay.
So we still have that provision in codes of all other small animals will be allowed to collect up to 5 by right. But if you want to go higher than that, then there's a use permit process that
Okay,
they can
so
request.
for the ducks, if they want to have 5 ducks, that's okay?
That's okay, yes.
Okay, all right. Thanks. Yeah, that's quite
Rabbits, goats,
important. Goats.
you name it.
No pigs though, right?
Pygmy goat or pygmy pigs. Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Let's go to Councilmember Amberg.
Mr. Mayor, Ryan, I just want to make sure that it's chicken and not roosters. We are still not allowing roosters, correct?
Correct. Domestic chickens only, hens. We still have the restriction on rooster or peafowl. If you're in an AG zone district where agricultural farming is allowed, that's where you can have roosters.
I will say I live in Circle G and I think we have all of those animals that and like for chickens, for us, they basically are there just to attract the coyotes from ASU Research Park. So, so they're dinner at certain aspects of the year.
Wonderful. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just want to also note, too, this is also a public hearing, so I'm going to open up the public testimony portion of the hearing. Is there anyone wishing to address the council? Nolan! Come on up. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Nolan Williams. I live in Daly Park. I didn't know this item was on the agenda. This is a little outside of the scope, but I would ask you to consider beehives next. Thank you.
No. Thank you. All right.
Who would have thought?
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address the council on item 8B7 this evening? If so, please get my attention. All right, seeing none, I will close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council members, any last comments or questions? All right, just to reiterate, the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The next item under the section is 8B8, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of a public utility easement located on the east side of Priest Drive and south of Rio Salado Parkway for address 1275 West Rio Salado Parkway, which is Carvana. This is a public hearing as well. If there's any public testimony, please get my attention right now. Seeing that, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council members, any comments or discussion? Seeing none, the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The next item under this section is 8B9, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the granting of a power distribution easement to Salt River Project Agricultural Improvement and Power District over certain city-owned land located at 2225 South 48th Street and authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute an easement agreement and related documents. This is also a public hearing item, so if there's any public testimony from anyone in the audience, please get my attention now. Seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council members, any comments or discussion? All right, hearing none, the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The next item under the section is 8B10, which is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance to transfer a portion of the capital improvement program, project number 6711269, Tempe Municipal Operations Center, Phase 2, to provide sufficient funding to complete project number 5509901C, impound vehicle storage facility. This is also a public hearing item. If there's any public testimony, can you please get my attention now? Seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council members, any comments or discussion? Seeing none, the second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. The last item under section 8B11 is to introduce and hold the first public hearing to adopt an ordinance to transfer budget appropriations from the Water Capital Improvement Program, Transportation and Right-of-Way Capital Improvement Program, Transit Capital Improvement Program, and Traffic Signals and Street Lighting Capital Improvement Program, as identified in the attached table to the General Government Capital Improvement Program, project number 6708311, Implementation Plan, Downtown Streetscape. This is also a public hearing. If there's any public testimony in the audience, can you please get my attention now? Nope, that's for the next, after this one. Yep. Okay. All right, so seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council, any comments or discussion? All right, seeing none, just want to reiterate, second and final public hearing on this item is scheduled for December 19th, 2024. So the next section on the non-consent agenda is ordinances and items scheduled for second hearing and final adoption. So votes will be taken tonight. The first item under the section is 8C1, which is to hold the second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a code text amendment within the Tempe Zoning and Development Code, amending section 3-402, accessory dwellings, and other related sections to implement mandates enacted by the legislature by the state of Arizona for ADU amendments. The applicant is the city of Tempe. Council, any questions for staff on item 8C1?
Motion to approve.
Actually, I got a public hearing first, so, all right. So, okay, so no questions here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing portion. I've got one card here, so Nolan Williams on item 8C1, please come forward, state your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Nolan Williams. I live in Daly Park here in Tempe. I think some of you might know, probably most of you have seen me before. Most of you might know that I've spent the better part of 3 years working on accessory dwelling unit policy at the state level and at the local level, bringing people to council meetings to argue on their behalf, fighting for the general plan and its housing elements, going to the state legislature and working with the Arizona Neighborhood Project, trying to promote good, quality state-level legislation. And from what I can tell, the Tempe ordinance, when I read it, looks like it is following the letter and spirit of the law for the that the state legislature gave, and that the city of Tempe is welcoming in accessory dwelling units, the small families and the residents and the renters and the students that it would allow, and the general change to the city of Tempe to the gentle and soft, and I think someone earlier said sustainable and reliable change to the character of the neighborhoods of Tempe that ADUs will bring. And I am very, very happy with the ordinance, at least the way that I've read it. The way that I've read it, it looks very, very good. And I want to thank everyone on staff for the high quality amendment that they have written. I want to thank everyone on council for their support for this program, for the kind words that you guys have said about ADUs, and about renters, and about people who want to live in the city and make this their home. And I want to say this amendment has my absolute, undivided, full support. I want to see it sail forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for your hard work. This is a public hearing as well, so if there's anyone else in the audience wishing to give public testimony on this item, please feel free to get my attention now. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council members, any comments or discussion? Vice Mayor Garland.
I'm just wondering if staff, if we could get an update on what we're going to be able to do to have some type of recommendation or suggestion that residents check with their HOAs before application or during the application process. Is there something? I know that, but I think we had talked about this before, that we can't require them as part of the process to check with their HOAs, but it would sure save a lot of headaches if we were able to do that. Where can we make something that says it's recommended to check that first?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Garland. Right now, we have a robust web page dedicated to information materials or frequently asked questions about ADUs. And so we intend to work with residents, provide that information ahead of time in that process, and be aware, acknowledge the rules and regulations of that. So within that process steps, we've identified, to be aware of CC&R regulations and HOA controls. They could have different opinions, more restrictions, even just a design review process if you're located with an HOA that may even allow an ADU. So one of the future steps that we plan on doing is we're working on some of our upgrades in our application systems. We're moving towards a cloud-based online portal. This will give us a little more flexibility in giving some of the residents some of those initial questions about HOA or CC&R regulations that we can ask ahead of time before they fill out the general application form. So give us an opportunity to be more vocal and provide more information to our residents about the laws and rules regarding ADUs.
I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad we're going to have that on the cloud-based system also, because I think it's us being proactive so that we don't run into issues for our residents don't run into issues if it gets approved at the city and they haven't gone through HOA. So I think it's a great thing to do. It'll really help our city. So thank you.
Agree. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion on this item?
I have a comment.
Yes, Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, and I know some HOAs, they're against the ADUs, but, and it's in our CCNRs. But it was also against the state or the cities, you know, and everything's changing now with the ADUs. So I just think that I would encourage HOAs to be flexible about this, and you know, the not in my backyard approach, it doesn't help us with housing and keeping people in our city. So I just encourage HOAs to be open about it, since it is a change in law. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Amberg?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to start off with this. I am going to be a yes vote on this. However, I'd kind of be remiss to say that I'm not completely aggravated that the legislature did this. There are some restrictions to ADUs that I would like to have seen in there that we are not going to be able to do as a city. And I'm going to go out on a limb and make a prediction right now that we're going to be back here in a couple of years, because the legislature is going to realize what they did wasn't probably the best idea in terms of restricting cities and what they can and can't do with these. So the legislature will probably be passing what would be referred to as a cleanup bill to fix some of that. So that's my prediction. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments, questions? All right. So with that being said, with the, no more comments or discussion, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Then moved by Vice Mayor Garland, seconded by Councilmember Adams.
Oh, here we go again. Okay.
For some reason I cannot get back to my.
I got. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Almost.
Please vote, and that would be me. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The next item under the section is 8C2, which is to hold the second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance for a code-text amendment to Chapter 16A, License and Business Regulations, Article 10, Short-Term Rentals and Vacation Rentals, related to owner residency regulations for accessory dwelling units. The applicant is the City of Tempe. Council, any questions for city staff on item 8C2? Seeing none, this is also a public hearing, so I'm going to open up the public testimony portion of item 8C2. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on this item? If so, please get my attention. Seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Let's see. Do I have a motion on item 8C3?
So move.
It's been moved by Councilmember Hodge.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Amberg. Please vote. It was close. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. The last item under the section is 8C3, which is to hold the second and final public hearing to adopt an ordinance authorizing the abandonment of a public sewer line easement located on the north side of Apache Boulevard and east of Price Road, 2320 East Apache Boulevard. This is also a public hearing item. If there's anyone who has any public testimony on this item, please get my attention now. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Council, any comments or discussion? It's been moved by Vice Mayor Garland, seconded by Councilmember Hodge. Please vote. And that item passes 6-0 with Councilmember Keating absent. That brings me to item number 9, current events, council announcements, and future agenda items. Just want to note that council members may request also that an agenda item be added to a future council meeting during their allotted time, but in accordance with the open meeting law, there should be no discussion on the item other than to clarify the request. Let's see, council members, I'm going to look to you, but I'm going to actually, let's see who's going first tonight. Councilmember Hodge.
Thank you. I want to first start off by giving a hello to a teacher who taught in Tempe Union for many, many years at McClintock High School, who's sitting in the audience. Mr. Barthol, who was actually both of my son's teacher, one of the best math teachers in the state of Arizona. So, great. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, I guess Tempe, this is a day for Tempe Union. I want to congratulate Tempe Union, Kyrene and Tempe L. Tempe Union got straight A's in all of their schools this time. So not only that, they were a straight A district. So congratulations, Tempe Union. Tempe Elementary School, received a B overall, so all their schools were either A's or B's. Congratulations, Tempe Elementary. And Kyrene School District either received an A or a B in all of their grades, so they are an A-B district too. So congratulations to all three of our public schools districts in the city of Tempe, and it shows where education is going in our city. So congratulations on that. I also want to congratulate all of the Don Carlos recipients. Well done, always well done. But Sharon Doyle, who has been a pioneer in education and just sitting on many commissions and boards, well earned the Don Carlos Award. So congratulations, Sharon Doyle. And also, Breakfast of Burdetta is a little bit different this year. This month, it's been for November, December. I am doing a holiday food drive, and that's to help with TCAA to restock theirs through the season. So it's going to be from November to December, all the way through the holidays. And we have four locations. One is at Escalante, Pyle, Kiwanis, and we also have one at Tempe City Hall. So if you have any extra canned foods are in your pantry, please drop it off in one of those areas. Is TCA says it's well needed, and they have they said, I want to say double the amount of people that has come through. So it's the time of the year. Thank you. And also I want to thank Fry's for donating Thanksgiving meals to support Tempe families and students. They donated over 6,000 and fed over 50 families. So thank you for Fry's. And I just also want to wish everybody a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. We won't see each other before Thanksgiving. So everybody in our community and our staff and family, thank you and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Councilmember Hodge. Next up this evening, Councilmember Amberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On October the 15th, I would happy to say that Vice Mayor Garland and I were there when Feed My Starving Children came back to Tempe. They originally actually started in Tempe, as she and I may age ourselves, but we have both been at the original location, which was on Priest, just south of Costco, with a few of our Girl Scout troops. But they moved to Mesa, unfortunately, and now they are back where they belong, which is in Tempe. So we can make a lot more memories, packing up food for needy children across the world. So, and I will say, this is the second time that I've heard Vice Mayor's story about her personal connection with that group and what she's seen whenever she's gone overseas. And of course, she made me cry again the second time. You can stop by their marketplace if you want to do some holiday shopping. They have a lot of wares there that are made by artisans that are in the cities and the countries that they actually ship the food out to. For $106, you can feed a child for a whole year and get a heart ornament to hang on your tree, along with some other beautiful, unique and handmade gifts. And I'm just going to throw this out here. Vice Mayor Garland and I did talk a little bit about maybe doing some type of City of Tempe night, going and packing. It kind of feeds both our, my need to give back to the community, and everybody may not know this about me, but I'm very competitive. And whenever you go and you pack food there, you actually compete with the tables next to you. So we were thinking maybe kind of like a police fire, kind of situation down there. So that would be fantastic if we could do that. So go check it out. Yeah. I too have one on Don Carlos, and for me, I want to highlight Sharon Doyle. On Monday night, she received the prestigious Don Carlos Humanitarian of the Year Award. She's a longtime friend of mine. I've known her for several decades. She is a longtime Alabama adversary of mine as well, and I love her despite that. Her decades of making sure Tempe's youth have the foundation they need to succeed is really is second to pretty much no one that I've met here in the city, and I've met a lot of people that have done a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, if you take a look at that picture, I'm pretty good friends with a lot of the folks that have won the Don Carlos Award in the past, and I am just so thrilled that Sharon is finally finally among those elites. And congratulations to all the winners that were there, and congratulations again to all of the past winners of the award.
Thank you so much. Next up, Vice Mayor Garland.
And I would just say that I think Nikki is really, really competitive, because when she talked about doing this thing at Feed My Starving Children, she got really excited about maybe council staff, fire, police. This would be really great if we, she was very excited about it. So it's on, it's on. And I just also want to say thank you and I mean, congratulations to all the Don Carlos Award winners. And it was great to see Sharon up there and smiling and talking and having everybody else talk about the organizations that she's belonged to. I don't have a slide to present. I just want to say two things real quick. One is that that staff and council members, some of us went to Tampa for the National League of Cities Conference. There are almost 3,000 cities that belong, cities, towns, and villages across the country that belong to the National League of Cities. There were over 4,500 attendees. And what was amazing is there were a few of us that actually sat on panels as panels of experts for the event, different breakout sessions. We have such an incredible, trying to think of the word. So many people out there really respect the city of Tempe. I'm on the board of directors, and I cannot tell you how many times people have come up and said how incredible the city of Tempe is by all of the innovative things that we do, our AI, our data collection, our homeless solutions, all these things that we are doing to innovate. There's a new book that they just produced, National League of Cities did, and it's about homelessness and homeless solutions. City of Tempe is in there. It seems like every time that there's something that they're discussing on the board of directors, somehow City of Tempe comes up in one of those conversations, and the fact that our mayor has so much energy, we have no idea where he gets it from. But it started back with, they were talking about Robin Arredondo Savage, they were talking about Joel Navarro, they were talking about Mayor Mitchell, all of these incredible people that have taken part of National League of Cities and really brought back some great, innovative, incredible ideas from there that we can turn around and use here in the city of Tempe. So I just want to say how incredibly lucky I feel to be able to go on to one of those trips and be able to learn from other people and have them learn from the things the city of Tempe is doing also. And then I also want to say, I'm not sure who picked the pictures up on the dais, but thank you so much for putting these new pictures up here by us. They're beautiful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next up, Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, a couple things. We have the Tempe Fantasy of Lights Parade and tree lighting ceremony, and it'll be held on Mill Avenue next Friday, November 29th. It's really fun. If people haven't participated in it before, it's a great, energetic parade and fun time, and then we'll light the Christmas tree. So please consider next Friday night coming on down. And the event does run from 4 to 8. So if you want to see get good position on the park or the parade route, you probably want to get there like around 5:30 or so. So you'll have a good view because it does get crowded. We will have live music and best of all, pictures with Santa. So please come and join us for that popular event. And it's actually one of my favorite holiday traditions. So I get pretty excited about it. Second is Arizona Theater Company. They will be presenting their holiday classic Scrooge at Tempe Center for the Arts starting December 7th and running through December 28th. This show is vibrant and fun, and then you can take your whole family to it. I've secured a buy one, get one free discount code for tickets. So if you would like to go and get a free ticket for everyone you purchase, simply go to atc.org and enter code SCG Adams. So that's SCG Adams. And check out to redeem your free tickets. I also want to thank have everyone have a great Thanksgiving, a safe Thanksgiving to my family and to your family. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next up, Councilmember Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick one, just to welcome back to all ASU alumni who I'm sure raced back in time to watch this meeting virtually from somewhere in Tempe. They're all back for ASU homecoming. It's a big weekend. We have some street closures, so just be mindful of that, but big weekend in Tempe, and welcome back.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I don't have any remarks this evening, so I'll move on to item number 10, public appearances. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council? If so, please come forward and state your name and city of residence for the record. All right, seeing none, I will close that portion of the meeting. That brings me to item number 11, adjournment. The next regular scheduled city council meeting is going to be on December 19th, 2024. Council, just want to note too, remember we have to stay behind and sign a document based on 7C20 that was approved on the consent agenda. But with that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening.